Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We welcome everyone for today's morning discussion. Well, it's not morning, it's 12 o'clock, so it's afternoon discussion. We are reading from Bhagavad Gita, and we'll continue our discussion from second chapter and the last section of the second chapter. Let me just quickly pull out my presentation, and then we'll start our discussion. Let me just see if it's working now. Where is Zoom? Okay, yes. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashatai Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gotase Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So welcome once again to our Bhagavad Gita discussion. Let's start with our today's topic. So today we are going to cover verses 54 to 72 of this chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. The chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, which we had given an acronym as Gita, Gita. We have discussed this. I am not going to repeating this point again here, but we'll move forward. So some lessons of what we had discussed last time. So last discussion we had a discussion from 39th verse up to 53rd verse, which is titled as Buddhi Yoga. where Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, perform your duty as a matter of service to me. Buddhi Yoga. It is for the first time where Lord Shri Krishna introduces yoga, because prior to that, Krishna had spoken on Karma Kanda. Yoga means to connect. Buddhi Yoga, we can loosely say using your intelligence. But intelligence is said to be the master of your mind and senses. In other words, intelligence is what determines or helps us to decide how we perform our actions. If you want to make it into an English way of saying Buddhi Yoga for that. In general, Buddhi Yoga is a science or work, or it's an art or work through which our work becomes worship, like that. And what are the characteristics of it? Just one quick second. I'll rearrange my table here. And what is the characteristics of it? Very first thing Lord Shri Krishna says, whoever, even swa-alpasya dharmasya, even for a fraction of a second, who endeavors on this path of Buddhi Yoga, which Krishna is explaining in this series of verses, with him, he gets an eternal credit, and Krishna promises him to save him from the greatest danger. We discussed examples last time. And who can follow on this path? What are the characteristics? Vayavasayatmikaha buddhir ekaha kuru nandana. Should have fixity of consciousness. This was a verse which we had discussed last time. And then the discussion comes about Buddhi Yoga versus Karma Kanda, because Lord Krishna spoke about Karma Kanda. So from 42nd to 43rd verse, Lord says, those who refer or study Vedic scriptures, or else those who are attracted to Vedic scriptures because of the things, the blessings and the awards which are mentioned, if you do certain rituals, Krishna says that is for less intelligent people, like that. And then what is the obstacle to practice Buddhi Yoga? Bhoga Aishwarya Pasaktanam. Whoever is too attached to bhoga, to enjoyment, Aishwarya, to collecting wealth and possessions like that, such a person cannot have Vaivasayatmikaha Buddhi like that. And finally, in 45th and 46th verse, Krishna says, the objective of Vedas is to rise above the three modes of matter nature and establish oneself in transcendence. And then Lord Shri Krishna gives a very beautiful analogy where he says the purposes of the well, there are different wells in the villages fulfilling different purposes. All of that is accomplished through a river. Similarly, everything is accomplished by one who takes to the process of Krishna consciousness. So question comes, how to perform such a work? Because Arjuna is supposed to perform a duty. He's on the battlefield. And that's a whole discussion all about how to perform a work such that it becomes Buddhi Yoga, or else the work becomes worship. Or how is the work performed according to Buddhi Yoga? Then text number 47, we had an elaborate discussion on this, where Lord Shri Krishna says our only adhikar, our only, the right is to do the duty. And not on the phala. We should not consider ourselves to be the cause, and we can never ever say that I will not perform one's duty. So we have discussed four things. We have the right to perform our duty, which means concentrate, do your best. Ma phaleshu kadachan, we are not entitled to the fruits of action, which means be detached from the fruits. Don't work for the fruits. Just do it as a matter of duty. Third, ma karma phal hetur bhur, do not consider yourself to be the cause of your work. In other words, the one who considers himself to be the cause of the work would also consider himself the enjoyer of the results of the work. Therefore, change your consciousness, to change your attitude from being the doer to serving the divine. And finally, do not be attached to not performing your duty, because the work itself brings the reward. What to speak of the result? This is according to Buddhi Yoga, like that, if somebody performs work. And how the work becomes worship? When such a work is performed with equanimity. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. When one is not elated, excited, or depressed with profit loss, like that. And when a work is performed for the matter of duty. And the classic example can be given when Arjuna lost Abhimanyu. before the beginning of the war, when this whole discussion happened, Arjuna has not lost anyone. Everyone is still alive. Yet he was bewildered, thinking that I would lose my relatives. He was bewildered, he was affected, thinking that I would lose my relatives. And at that point of time, he had never ever fathomed that he would lose anyone on his side. He was more worried about losing his relatives over on the other side. So it but raises an obvious question: if that was the case, then how come Arjuna continued performing his duty when he lost somebody, not somebody from his side, but his own son, Abhimanyu, who was killed not rightfully but brutally, violating all the codes of the war, the codes of Kshatriya by which they live, by which they fight in the war. By violating all that, Abhimanyu, a young 16-year-old boy, was brutally killed by several warriors encircling him, which was against the codes or the ethics of Kshatriyas. If Arjuna would not have understood this message properly, if there was still a dilemma on what Krishna had told him, then Arjuna should have given up his duty, isn't it? Arjuna, just thinking about the loss that Kauravas would have, said, I would not fight. And there is no mention that Arjuna was worried about thinking that I would lose Yudhishthira, Bhim, Nakul, Sahadev. There was never a question of it for him. But when he lost Abhimanyu, yet he performed. So that's the point. Yogastha kuru karmani sangatekta dhananjaya. So profit, loss, gain, whatever happens, continue performing your duty. And that's how your work becomes worship. And Arjuna, through the war of Kurukshetra, proved it, that he performed it. And with this kind of an action, he pleased Krishna. So we saw in second chapter that three times Krishna says Arjuna to tolerate. First, tolerate skin disease. Second, tolerate sukhe dukhe samekritva labha labha jaya jaya. Where Krishna says in 38 verse, do it as a duty. And again in the third time in the 48 verse, siddhya siddhyo. Either you get victory or defeat, but just do it as a matter of duty. Here the discussion is buddhi yoga, which means matter of duty for what? As a pleasure to Krishna. And this is considered to be the highest platform of performing an action. And when an action is performed with this consciousness, that is done as a pleasure to Krishna, as a service to Krishna, this action is called as action dictated by buddhi yoga. Or this is called as akarma, which does not give us any result in terms of good or the bad result like that. And the discussion continued. Text number 49, Krishna said, reject all abominable activities on the strength of buddhi yoga. And this is where Arjuna gets bewildered. Oh, abandon all abominable activities. So Arjuna is still thinking war is the most abominable activity. So I should give it up on the strength of buddhi yoga. So what had happened here is Arjuna has got confused between buddhi yoga and jnana yoga. He is not able to reconcile how somebody give up abominable activity through buddhi yoga and yet fight. For him, his work, which is fighting the war, which he thinks is abominable, cannot be performed through buddhi yoga, because Krishna have already said, Durena hi avaram karma. Give up all abominable activities on the strength of buddhi yoga. So buddhi yoga, that Arjuna, if he performs buddhi yoga, or if he performs his action as buddhi yoga dictates for the service and the pleasure to the Krishna, I will not get any reactions. This point is not yet clear to Arjuna. So he is confused. Oh, Krishna is saying on the strength of buddhi yoga, which means buddhi means jnana, intelligence, which means on the platform of knowledge, I should give up all abominable activity. And my work right now is abominable. So looks like Krishna is saying on the strength of buddhi yoga, I should give up my work. But yet Krishna is saying fight. So Arjuna is confused. You want me to fight? You want me to give fight? Like that is a doubt which we're going to discuss now in the third chapter. Oh, no, not now. Next week we'll discuss. We'll give you a little introduction of that. And these are some of the benefits and advantages of buddhi yoga, like that. And we have discussed briefly about what is the difference between karma yoga and bhakti yoga. Karma yoga means for the sake of purification, actions are performed with that understanding. Whereas buddhi yoga or bhakti yoga, action is performed for the pleasure or service to Krishna, like that. And with that, we come to the last section of the second chapter, verse number 54 to 72. Before we move ahead, I just gave a quick overview here again. Does anyone has any question from the previous section? Before we move ahead, I want to clarify. We can have it from here. All right, so let's proceed ahead. Now, text number 54 to text number 72. We'll go with the book first, then we'll take a look at the presentation. What does Krishna says here? So here, text number 54 of second chapter, Arjuna begins to speak. And Arjuna says, Sthita pragnasya ka bhasha. Bolo bhai. Oh, actually, we don't recite here, right? I'm so sorry. I just came from another program. There I was making students recite. That was a live program. This is online. This will not happen online. So I'll only recite. At your respective place, you can recite as you wish to recite. It'll take time. Okay. Sita pragnasya ka bhasa samadhi stasya keshava satadhikim pravasheta kim asita vrajeta kim. Sita pragya. That person, Sita pragya. Sit, situated, comes from sthit, situated. Pragnasya, one is situated firmly in Krishna consciousness. Ka bhasha, कौन सी भाषा बोलता है वो? संस्कृत बोलता है, हिंदी बोलता है, इंग्लिश बोलता है, मराठी बोलता है, केमचो मजा माचो बंगाली बोलता है, गुजराती बोलता है, क्या बोलता है वो? So that's the first question. का भाषा? समाधि सस्य केशवः. One who is situated in trance, what is his language? Then, Kim Prabhasheta, what does he speak? One is about what language, and second, what does he talk? Even if he speaks, what does he speak about? And it's a very interesting question. Just like if somebody is in love with something, I'm saying something, not even a person these days. Like a lot of people who are in love with iPhone. And you're in any time association with them, they'll only talk about the glories of iPhone. So something like that, a question we asked, what does he speak? And then, Kim asita vrajeta kim? Kim asita? Asita. Sit. Baithta hai. Asita, something like that, just to help you understand Sanskrit. Asita. So how does he sit? Vrajeta. And how does he walk? So Prabhupada writes a very beautiful purport. Prabhupada says, there are symptoms for everything in terms of his particular situation. Somebody who's poor, the way he dresses, and of course the way he will speak, what will he seek? Bhiksham, he'll only ask for something, give me, I haven't eaten anything. And his walking, his talking, everything has a particular pattern to it. Similarly, Prabhupada says, one who is in Krishna consciousness has a very particular nature of talking, walking, thinking, and feeling. Just like a rich man is known by his symptoms, a deceased man is known by his symptoms. Similarly, learned man is known by his symptoms. So it's a very important question asked, Prabhupada says, by Arjuna. How do we determine a Krishna conscious person? How do we recognize a Krishna conscious person? It's a very, very important discussion. Externally, our activities are not much different than the activities of those who are karmis, or those who are sense gratifier. In a sense, which means aha nidra bhaya, and those who are grihasthas, metno for the sake of procreation. So those external activities are there, like that. But here, question is not about external activities. We sleep, they sleep, we eat, they eat, everything is same. But the question is not about external activities. That is something we need to understand largely. When somebody comes to spiritual culture, you see external things changes very quickly. The dress code changes, the kantimala comes, first tilak comes. And along with tilak comes the saffron color bead bag. So you will be gifted with a bead bag. You'll have a bead bag hanging on your neck, then gradually you'll have a kantimala, you'll have dhoti kurta, and you'll have shikha. A lot of things happen like that, gradually. But here, the actual change is not about the gross body. The actual change or the transformation which has to occur is in the subtle body. So when we're going to read this discussion, of course, this is about Sthita Prajna, who is firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. However, this discussion is equally very, very important for a sadhaka to understand how to make an improvement. Progress in Krishna consciousness to be gauged not by our external performances. Progress in Krishna consciousness has to be measured by our change in internal consciousness. How our subtle body acts, thinks and feels, thinking, feeling and willing like that. And that's the subject matter of this section now. So now the 55th verse comes. Somehow there is a little less light here. I'm not able to read well. Can we a little bit open the curtain? Now we're going to start with our discussion of the 55th verse, where Lord Shri Krishna gives the answer. Just open slightly. Yeah, this is better. Thank you. Where Lord Shri Krishna would now give an answer to Arjuna's question. So text number 55. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmani Vatmana Tushta Sita Pragya Taduchyate. So here Lord Shri Krishna answers, what are the general characteristics of a person who is situated in transcendence? And the general characteristic of a person who is situated in transcendence is he is always engaged in serving the Supreme Personality of God. Always is a very important word here, huh? Not he's engaged, he's always engaged. Somebody please read out the translation of the verse, text number 55. Sunny Prabhu, go ahead.
The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness
Translation, please.
Sorry. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all the varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind thus purified
find satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness.
Hare Krishna. We're having a 3D effect in the sound today. Okay. All right. Multiple sounds were coming. No problem. I hope all the audience have understood what was going on. So, Arjuna's 4 questions asked in the 54th verse. First, the symptoms. How does he reveal his position, the speech, sit, and how does he walk? We'll take a look at it one by one. And here, the question is being answered in the 55th verses. How does he reveal his position? The symptoms. And Krishna says, he is detached from sense gratification. Atmani evatmana tushta. And all his needs are fulfilled by his spiritual practice alone. Atmani evatmana tushta. Sita pragyas taduchyate. Tada. At that time, uchyate is said to be when a person is not dependent on some external or material trigger for his happiness. He's happy, and when he's happy, in our case, he can tolerate chanting the 17th round. After 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is done. You can sit and yet chant the 17 rounds and go on to the 18th round. And then to the 19th round, and to the 20th round, you're able to stretch it. And finally, the pujaris come on the altar and they open the altar. So then you get up. Otherwise, you are not planning to get up and continue chanting. So that is what it means by Atmani evatmanah tushta. So, Hare Krishna. If that's not happening, that's okay, but that should be something we should strive for. We should try to chant the 17th round. That's the point here. So, let me just see if I have put things in the slide a little bit. I've just put the shloka in slide, okay? We'll discuss about it. Prajahati Kaman, all right. So here in the purport, Prabhupada mentions a few interesting things. The very first thing Srila Prabhupada mentions, Yasyasti Bhakti Bhagavati Akinchana Sarve Gune Satra Samasata Sura. One who is in Krishna consciousness has all the godly qualities like that. That's the point Prabhupada mentions. Those who are not practicing Krishna consciousness, manorathenasti dhavato bhai. Even they may be perfectly performing their varnashrama dharma or their swadharma. Manorathenasti, manoratha. They are situating on the chariot of the mind. Manorathenasti dhavato bhai. And bhai, they are running here and there all over the place. Such a person lives a life on his mental speculation like that. And then Prabhupada talks about it. Such a person cannot give up sense desires. He may concoct some ideas about controlling his mind and senses, but it doesn't work out. And then in between of the purport, Prabhupada writes, artificially such sense desire cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation. For this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. Now, this is something, a very important discussion about seva. Srimad Bhagavatam, you flip over any page of Srimad Bhagavatam, if in that particular page, if anything has been spoken about bhakti, it would be mentioned devotional service, render service. How to realize God, if that is the subject matter going on, it is never mentioned by your endeavors, by your knowledge, you can realize God. You can only realize God by service. What do you mean by service? When we serve, tadvidi parinipatena pariprashnena sevaya. When we render service through Guru Parampara to the Lord, when we render service, then we attract mercy. So this path is a mercy path. It's not a path of endeavors alone. Of course, we need to take initiative, but we don't get success. We cannot get success. Look at what is the destination of the Jnanis and the destination of those who are hateful of Krishna and being killed by Krishna. The destination is same. So how can we say the Jnanis are successful? Jnanis are failure. They spend thousands of years or long time performing severe austerities and penances. They get the same destination which those get who hated Krishna. That's not success. And Bhagavatam speaks again and again on the subject matter. Success is to be able to develop personal relationship with Krishna. But the personal relationship with Krishna cannot happen without we receive the mercy of Krishna. The mercy of Krishna cannot come unless we receive mercy of Guru Parampara. The mercy of Guru Parampara cannot come unless we receive the mercy of Guru. The mercy of Guru cannot come unless we please our immediate seniors, who are acting as a representative of our spiritual master and through whom we are trying to serve Guru Parampara, Guru Parampara and the Lord. And that's how one can control our senses through seva. And that's how the bhakti marg becomes very easy. How do you perform seva? In conditioned nature, we have karmatmakam buddhi. Karmatmakam buddhi means which is conditioned to perform action. Action is performed through 5 working senses. And you will see something has to be done by a person. He cannot sit idle. And somebody is saying that I'm sitting idle, then it is said idle mind is devil's workshop. Then he's planning. Planning is also an action. He's still performing an action like that. So because we cannot give up this nature, and why we cannot give up nature of performing an action? Because it's the nature of consciousness to be active. It is the nature of consciousness to be active, the nature of the soul to be active. So the soul cannot be inactive. We cannot not perform an action. Therefore, Bhakti Marg is all about purifying our actions. And how do we purify our actions? Very easy, engage in the service of the Lord. Nothing, rather than going through some practices of austerities and all that, no, just perform service to the Lord as we have been told or we have been directed. That's the means of it. And then comes text number 56. So this was the general characteristic of a Sthit Pragya Vyakti who has no material desires, and he's fully satisfied by performing his spiritual activities. Now the second question. What is the speech of such a person? Now when a question is asked about Kim Prabhasheta, what does he speak? Actually refers to how does he respond to different situations. Situations such as affection, anger, and neutrality. 56th and 57th verse talks about it. So Krishna says, such a person is not disturbed nor elated. So it's kind of we can raise a question here in itself. Neither disturbed, well, we'll talk about it when it comes to the shloka. And second thing, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha. Such a person is freed from attachment, fear, and anger, like that. Let's see what is a shloka. Text number 56, second chapter. Shloka is on your screen. Dukheshu anudvignam manaha sukheshu vigata spraha vitarag bhaya krodha stitadhi munir uchyate. Such a person is said to be stitadhi. Dukheshu anudvignamana. It's understandable that we should not get disturbed. It's not good for our well-being. But not get excited in happiness. That is not fair, huh? तुम बोलते हो ये मत करो वो मत करो चलता है. अभी तुम बोल रहे हो खुश भी ना रहो. This is too much. How many of you agree? I remember for the first time when I was attending these Bhagavad Gita classes back in America. I was a student there. So, student life in America is a great, great struggle. There's too much brightness here. A little bit cover it up. I'm partially into Brahman right now. If you don't do, by the end of the class, I'll be merged into Brahman. The students will say, we lost our speaker in Brahman. Okay, this is good. What was I talking about? I remember when I was giving an example. So, I've come from Agarwal family, North Indian Agarwal family, which means there is no eggs and there is no non-veg. There's no culture of it, like that. But we did had a culture of eating onion, and tea was, tea has to be taken. So when they said tea, I said, oh, it was really my first heartbreak in my life. I never had a girlfriend, but first heartbreak was when they said no tea. I said, oh no, how can I live without tea? All right, tolerate it for the pleasure of Krishna. Of course, I'm joking, no pleasure for Krishna. That was a concept. Okay, all right, chhod diya tea. Okay. And then they said onion. The only thing that I cooked all my life there in the afternoon was pulav. That's what I only knew. And pulav, vegetable pulav without onion, I've never eaten in my life. I said, Hari, how can you do it? They said, no onion. I said, oh, second heartbreak. I said, okay, tolerate, no problem. Matas pashasu kamte. Tolerate. Things are going okay. Now, this time, though, I exploded. I said, this is too much now. I'm quitting now. This is too much. So I remember we were sitting outside in the front of the temple. There was a house kind of a thing. Nice Monday evening, and right on the campus, and the students were walking, and 3-4 of us, and like that we'll read Bhagavad Gita together, and we'll have a senior devotee who would guide us. And then the discussion began, and suddenly the discussion came. I believe it was a Chaturmas month which was going on. Something was going on. Chaturmas must be there. I was in September that time. So the discussion came on Masoor Dal. Now, after tea, after onion, which means pulav, my next favorite, in fact, the most favorite dal was Masoor Dal. You understand the Kali Dal? I don't know what you say in English. And then the speaker said, so we don't take Masoor Dal. I said, ab to bahut ho gaya. अभी तो बहुत हो गया ये. I was so angry that time. The speaker got frightened. क्या हुआ इस बेचारे को? कौन सी frustration निकाल रहा है मुझ पे ये? मैंने कहा चाय छुड़वा दी, अनियन छुड़वा दी. अब मसूर दाल कैसे vegetarian नहीं? I really argued. So he said, it's protein, whatever excuse gave and all that. Fine. That's okay. But the point I'm trying to say, there are things which really, it's like, how is it possible? So, dukheshu nudvignamana, okay. Don't get disturbed in distress. Don't get excited in happiness. This is too much, man. So, let's ask our Bhakti Shastri students why we should not get excited in excitement. People go to adventure park to get excited. So you are saying, Hare Krishna, you can go to the theme park, but don't get excited. So who would like to answer this? Why we should not get excited? Okay, Mother Kamalika, your hand is up. Then we'll go with Anshul Prabhu. Go ahead, Mother.
Because it will cause attachment.
It will cause attachment. I mean, we are already enough attached. What further attachment will cause? As if we are detached, it will cause attachment. Yeah, I mean, we are too attached already. Okay, good answer, Mother. Where is our Anshul Prabhu? Anshul Prabhu, go ahead.
Yes, Prabhuji. So the answer was like on similar lines that so there is a verse that comes later, right? Dhatu Vishan Punsa. So like if we get attached, then it leads to like illusion and all that. Like so it's basically if it gets fulfilled, then it leads to more greed, and like that happiness leads to more greed, and if it doesn't get fulfilled, then it leads to more anger and frustration. So ultimately, something which can provide us that happiness is the only thing that can lead us to a kind of frustration and sorrow about that. So if we kind of have to stay away from getting that frustration and anger, then we'll have to stay away from getting too excited about something as well.
Okay, good attempt. And Sidulu Prabhu. Sorry, Prabhu, if I didn't pronounce it properly.
Yes,
Okay, yes, Prabhu.
Yes. Yes, Prabhu. Actually, we will become proud when.
But become proud, correct?
Yes. And
correct.
The same, and when we don't get that, and again we will become frustrated.
Okay. Chintamani Mataji, where are you? There. Can you unmute?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mother.
The thing is, when this distress and happiness is like a sine curve. Once it comes and once it goes. So if during happiness we become too elated, the moment the distress comes, we're going to have a big fall from the peak to the trough. So there is going to be a huge effect. So what Krishna is trying to say, keep yourself, because happiness and distress will keep coming and going, and it's not permanent. So keep yourself stable so that you keep the balance.
Correct. So all of you are on the same line. Other sentences that mention like pride and all that. That's the thing. I mean, you may get success today and you may be excited about it, but you're not sure when you wake up tomorrow morning, you'll still have the success with you. And to the degree you become excited because of it, as many of you said, Mother Kamalika said at the very first thing, right? You become attached to it. And then, for example, imagine you published a YouTube video by evening 5 p.m. and by evening 9 p.m. it was viral. Had, let's say, 2,000 likes. And you're like, wow, within few hours, and it was 2,000, 3,000 likes. And so fantastic. And you go to sleep. God only knows if you'll be able to sleep or not. But let's say you go to sleep. And next morning you wake up, and then you wake up and you again, first thing you're going to open is go and check out your video. And now you see it has 5,000 likes, but 10,000 dislikes. So this is what Mother was talking about. Now imagine how disturbed you would be. Isn't it? That's the point that is mentioned here like this. Krishna says, and what happens with this agitation? You cannot, Vaivasayatmika buddhi ekhe kurunandana cannot happen. Because now your mind has got attracted with the temporary attachment. And it will take your consciousness away, and you will be thinking about that. Even if you have to chant your 16 hours, you will not be able to chant. You know that very well. With little things, how we get disturbed. Therefore, it is said, no, learn to become like this. And therefore, in the next sense, it says, Vitaragha, Bhaya, Krodha, give up your attachment, fear, and anger like that. One is not disturbed in the mind. That's the point is mentioned here. And what could be the perfect example or role model for all of us? Then Srila Prabhupada himself. But before we make a point about Srila Prabhupada, if any one of you can go or read from the bottom of the purport, you'll see 8th or 9th line from the bottom. Similarly, when he's happy, he gives credit to the Lord. That's the point. So now question arises, but we cannot just do it artificially. So how should we behave? How should we behave is the point Prabhupada mentions here. So you will see in the between Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sadurlabha, he is called Muni fixed in mind. After that comes a line, such a fully Krishna conscious person. Please read from there. Madhav Kripa Prabhu, your hand is up. I know your hand was up for answer, but if you want, you can read it now.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Yes, the highlighted portion on the screen, Prabhu.
Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries. For he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that his miseries by the grace of the Lord are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful, successful, or no success. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination.
Wow, what a point, isn't it? Can you imagine? Just imagine if we have this consciousness, what a blissful life would be. There's no sorrow, no pain. And what could be a better example than Srila Prabhupada himself, who's writing this point here? Srila Prabhupada was wandering on the streets of Delhi to distribute his published Back to Garden magazine. Once he got a heat stroke and fainted. And other day he was hit by a cow or a bull, if I'm correct, right? He could have just said, कुत्ते ने काटा होता तो फिर भी ठीक है, कुत्ता कुत्ता है. Being hit by a cow or bull, Namo Brahmanaya Devaya Go Brahmanaya Hitaya Cha. Srila Prabhupada said, my dear Lord, I'm serving you and your favorite animal has only hit me. And see how our mind thinks, which means Krishna is not probably pleased. That's the reason he said his favorite animal only to hit me. I'm hypothesizing here, but I'm just trying to tell you how mind goes crazy. No, nothing. Can anyone tell me, we have discussed this, of course, I'm not trying to ask you to describe the psychology of Srila Prabhupada here, but let's make an attempt, an endeavor. Why Srila Prabhupada, for the example we are discussing as a real life case study, was not getting, of course, there is definitely an effect. You get disturbed, you get happy. It's not that you should not be happy. Point is not become attached. And when you lose something, you should not stop performing your duty. That's the practical meaning of it. How Srila Prabhupada was able to handle both and continue on. So much success, yet he was humble. In the beginning, so much failure, yet he continued persevering. Yes or no? There's no better example for perseverance than Srila Prabhupada. And when he got so much success, in New York, he had to struggle so much to raise funds from the Indian government, from the rich businessmen in India and everything, to get something. And 10 years later on, in that same New York, 1975, there was the biggest Rath Yatra festival. Can you imagine what Srila Prabhupada would be, emotions he would be going through? 10 years ago, I was a beggar here. Nobody was willing to help me. The Indian government said no. The big rich businessmen who had promised me, they said no. My godbrother said no. And 10 years later, he is having one of the biggest Rath Yatra in the biggest capital of the world with hundreds of temples in his pockets. Yes, Srila Prabhupada was not proud. So why? Any thoughts on it? For the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga to Hari Bol. This is Achintya Bheda Tattva. If nothing comes, you say for the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga. Tell me in action. This is theoretical statement. For the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga. Fine. Anyone. So there are already hands up. I don't know these hands up from the previous question or reading or his recently raised hands. Okay, Sanat Rishi Prabhu, let's begin with you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I was actually thinking of the same line Prabhu just mentioned. He was doing everything for the pleasure of Krishna. So that's what I was thinking of.
Which is correct. 100% correct, no doubt about it. Okay, let me put it a little more, make it a little more fundamental for us. How can we a little bit imbibe this quality of Srila Prabhupada of working in such a spirit? Let me put it this way. How can we do it then? Now, for the pleasure of Krishna, correct, which is true, we can strive, but unless we are at that level of consciousness, we cannot act like this forever. Isn't it? It will not happen. But if that's the consciousness, okay. But at sadhaka stage, how can we do it?
Following Guru's instructions, the heart.
Correct.
And
Following. I would say more than that. Let's close with this. Doing on the platform of duty. This is my duty. That's it. This is something where we have to rise up now. This is my duty, and I'm going to do it. Of course, when we mature and the consciousness comes to that level of this is for the pleasure of my Guru and pleasure. See, when you say pleasure of Guru now, that means pleasure of Krishna. It's not different. We cannot have pleasure of Krishna minus pleasure of Guru. Please understand that. We have no connection with Krishna. Our connection with Krishna is through Guru Parampara. So it's generally pleasure of Guru, and the pleasure of Guru comes on the strength of our relationship with Guru. And that takes time. That's a process. Gradually it happens. It strengthens. And it happens when you have been continuing on serving on the duty platform for consistent time. And it could take a whole lifespan. It could take a whole lifespan to come to that. This is for my pleasure of Guru. Imagine Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj disciples, particularly the sannyasi disciples. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur raised them, brahmacharis and then sannyasis. And Srila Prabhupada, when he took sannyas, he was requesting and begging help from all of them only. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was so much eager for preaching, come forward. They were not able to do it. So, at least to begin with, at the platform of duty. This is what it is. So therefore, when a question was asked for Srila Prabhupada in New Vrindavan, very famous question, Prabhupada, what if I am not determined enough to follow the vows of initiation? Prabhupada says, being a human being means determination. Only animals don't have determination. If you say you are a human being, how can you not have determination? And that too, when the devatas are sakshi, are part of your initiation, how can you not follow your commitment? To first come on the duty platform, then it comes on the platform of for the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga, like that. So that's a little bit when it becomes practical. And then text number 57, in the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Who is never unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising the good nor hating the bad, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. It sounds easy, but it's not that easy. Let's read the purports. Okay, Mother Kamalika, your hand is up. Probably was it for answer. Read out the purport. Unmute and go ahead.
There is always some upheaval in the material world, which may be good or evil. One who is not agitated by some material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there is always the possibility of good and evil, because this world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil, because he is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good, absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in a perfect transcendental position called technically Samadhi.
So, good and evil. So, if we talk about it for a second, so gradually we do understand, okay, everything good that is happening is by Krishna's grace, by Lord's grace, fine. But we are living in a community, we are living with the devotees, and when you come together and live together, there are always, because the nature of Kali Yuga, Kalavasmin Yuge Janha Mandas Manda Mandabhagya Hi Upaduta, because of the nature of conflicting nature, and of course also because the modes are different, we are affected by different modes. We already agree when we come and live together, when we are in close association, at times, sometimes it may happen, let's say somebody might speak harsh words to you. How many of you say you can tolerate the harsh words and move on with the life? Or you think, oh, becomes very difficult. Imagine somebody insults you. What would you do? How would you feel about it? See, there are 3 levels of relationship. One is relationship with the senior, one is relationship with the peer, one is relationship with the junior. Now, what I mean by insult is different than chastisement. The right of chastisement is to the mentor or is to your Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru. So that chastisement may seem to you as an insult, or because depending on how big is our ego, we may find it. But that is a different relationship. But now imagine if your peer insults you, speaks harshly to you, how would you deal with it? Or let's say imagine your manager or your service in charge speaks harshly to you and you are hurt. How would you deal with it? Can we just continue on tolerating it? It's not easy. How many of you agree you'll get really hurt if somebody speaks very harshly to you? Particularly, again, I'm not saying it's chastisement, for your action. It is related to service and it is by a service authority, not by a mentor and guide. How many think you'll be hurt? And next day while chanting, you'll be thinking, Hari Bol, tu aa samne. अगली बार मेरी बारी कल तेरा दिन था आज मेरा दिन रहेगा and you keep on thinking, munching in your head, next time this fellow comes, I will counter argue like this. Before he or she opens the mouth, I would go onto the barrage of my comments like that. How? And first of all, how many of us have had an experience where somebody said something and we felt really hurt and it went on ringing in our head for days together? Please raise your hands. Those who are not raising their hand, they are not from this material world. So better you raise your head. You're proving for yourself you have come from spiritual world for the higher purpose. So if you belong to material world, it is bound to happen with anyone and everyone, no doubt about it. So here I would like to ask all of you are experienced devotees for so many years, how would you resolve this? How would you resolve this? Let's say an issue arises. Let's talk about something happens with your peer. First of all, hey, you are not part of this class. We'll ask the audience here. If it happens with a peer, and the peer have spoken to you, and you know that this person is envious. This person is having a competitive mentality, and is trying to pull me down. So how would you deal with it then? Okay, their hands are up, so I don't know why the hands are up. Okay, hands are up for this answers only, na? Okay, so let's start with the Vaikuntapati Prabhuji, the senior most guy here. Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, not audible.
You're not audible, no? Can you
Yes, audible.
The way I handle it is I start chanting in the heart.
Oh, that's the reason I said you're an advanced fellow. So at advanced stages, it may happen like this. Okay, but still, what else could be done? And you have to be around this person. You have to still be around.
It's my past karma because of which it is happening.
Correct. So that's also a mature understanding to see that it's my past karma because of which is happening. Okay. Good. So these are very mature answers, so let's hear from others. Okay. Madhav Kripa Prabhu, you have something to say. Go ahead, Prabhu. Unmute.
This is something which we experience both at serving together as in temple, and also probably in our day-to-day job life as well. So I personally take out time to discuss with the person what is the misunderstanding. If there is any misunderstanding, I try to convey my point and make sure that we move on from that and work together cohesively. So that's a practical approach which I take, and that makes me calm down. Until and unless I discuss with the opposite person, I keep on brooding at that sometimes. So of course,
Agreed.
what Prabhu sold is a very matured and spiritual way of thinking, which I resort to after deliberating for some time on this, and then I go to that spiritual aspect later.
Yeah, the brooding point is correct, the mind. So what answer Vaikunth Prabhuji gave, I would tell you that happens at the level of the mind, where your mind is now beginning to harp more on spiritual subject matters, where you don't care. I don't want to waste my time on this petty issues. You getting it? Where our mind has got sufficient nourishment and sufficient backlog of spiritual subject matter, then it's okay. But if it is on the transition phase, like 1 feet in the material world, other in the spiritual world, and there that happens now, and mind does not have that much absorption right now in spiritual subject matter. We don't have that much reading and hearing culture. Then, but naturally, mind continues to brood on why he did it. He's always envious of me. This is why he spoiled. And particularly, imagine somebody spoils your service effort like that. So, okay, one thing you can do is talk to the peer and work it out. Great. Any other one or two attempts here? Who else have not spoken so far? We'll just take one or more inputs here. I saw some of the devotees had hand. Okay, Mother Kalpana Mataji, I'm sorry, you've written your Karmi name, so I can just see that. Bear with me. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Mother.
So the first thing I do get is I do get quite upset about what has happened, and then I try to tell myself that I'm sure that I'm having some karmic account with this person, which I have to clear. And then secondly, in one of Raj Bihari Prabhu's lecture, he had told us that if you have issues with some people, you do an exercise. You sit down, take a piece of paper and write down all the good qualities of this person. So that will help you to see the better side of this person, the good side of this person, and maybe just he has done one wrong thing. That doesn't mean that he is not a good or a better person. So this will help us to clear that consciousness we have about that particular person.
Correct.
That's what we
Good. Wonderful answers. What if a senior does it? And you feel like, oh, I feel like cheated, betrayed. Why did he or she behave like this to me? Don't he or she knows how much hard I'm working for Krishna? Yet this person is passing such a loose comments about me. Misunderstandings happens. What would you do in case of a senior, How would you handle that? So Rakesh Chinta Kunta Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. So first thing is like usually I get nervous to speak to the seniors. So usually I will have the long breath before having a verbal talk with them. So and then jot down points like whatever things he has mentioned and want to get clarified. That is what usually I do. Like I get nervous and I'll have a long breaths before having any verbal talks.
So one thing we will see, thank you. One thing we'll see that everyone is mentioning, having an open-ended conversation helps a lot, which saves us unnecessary brooding. And what happens when you keep on brooding like this now, then our mind keeps on building story. Dekh to jara, kaise ghur raha hai? He's so envious of me. So if a devotee looks at you, then you say, he's staring at me. Kal gali di thi, aaj marega. And the story goes on building. So we need to come and have a discussion about it. Yes, Prabhuji, go ahead.
Yeah, Prabhu, there is also one more point. Just I thought I will add this. See, I've heard in lectures also that, the tolerance part which comes, the story of Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva and, all these people. Now here, when somebody is selling something to us, and it's our karma which is getting reduced. If I react, then I'm building another karma on that basis. So the best thing to handle all these things is that to tolerate, keep quiet. As I said, go back to your chanting, start chanting the heart in the mind. Then that also cools you, calms you down. And you don't incur additional karma because of this.
Yes, I mean, this is totally correct. Again, this requires a certain platform to begin thinking like that and to be able to act. Larger population would not be able to handle it, which is correct, philosophically correct. And we remember the example is known as Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. When he was a Grihastha, I believe Grihastha had moved into the ashram or something. He was once slapped by a devotee. I don't know what was the situation. You might have heard of the example. And when Prabhupada came to know later on, and Prabhupada was so pleased that, Maharaj he was not a Maharaj at that time. He had not reacted to it. He just tolerated it. So, which is correct. That way it requires a certain level.
I had one big experience on this some about 15, 20 years back when I went to Mayapur. One senior devotee, he blasted me out for no mistake of mine. And I thought that should I react really? Should I tell him anything? One thing like that. But then I thought that it is useless to talk anything because that guy is so furious and shouting.
Correct.
That place, took my mala and went sat before Panchatattva. I said, this is the only solution I got. Today my bad.
So one thing is, if it is possible for us to walk away, then it's okay. But if it's with somebody who we have to face day in, day out, then it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
Then if it is somebody who you have to face day in, day out, you cannot say every day I'll go and chant. Then your 16 hours will begin only after when you get chastised. So this is okay, like you visited some place, which is correct. So thank you, Prabhuji. So here, maybe Chintamani Mataji, please go ahead. This is now particularly, Mother, I'm asking if a senior does it, again, this is not for the mentor, Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru. That's a different case study altogether. But here, if a senior does it, who really doesn't know you that well, and based on whatever reasons has got mad at you or chastised you, and you feel greatly disturbed because of it. When you're feeling disturbed, what will you do? That is a case study here.
So if definitely we will feel disturbed. We are not in that stage of Sthita Prajna. So, but if we try to tolerate it, it's better, because especially if it's a senior, we will be committing Vaishnava Aparadha also in the process. If we
Therefore, I'm sorry to interject, therefore I want to make a point. Please do not tolerate, because if you tolerate, we'll end up committing Vaishnava Aparadha. Because you can tolerate once, you can tolerate twice, maybe you can tolerate thrice. It depends, maybe you can hit a century. But if the person has that habit, and if you lose your temper, it would be a biggest volcanic eruption in this history of mankind. And that time when mind goes crazy, then we will not think about it. We'll say, hell with Vaishnava Aparadha, hell with him only. I'm sorry for that language. I'm just saying, I'm speaking how the mind speaks here, I'm just kind of trying to represent the mind. So, I mean, all of you look like, it looks like for you and Prabhuji, the favorite character is Prahlad Maharaj. So, tolerance is the thing which is coming out loudly here. But correct, we should, once in a while, it's okay. We need to tolerate, no doubt about it. But if somebody who's there, who has that habit or who has misunderstood you, how can you continue on? Because that person will think you are like this. So let's conclude this and move forwards. I had this issue.
Prabhuji, I have a question here.
I'll just conclude with an answer and we'll come back. I'll just make my point and we'll take the question, Prabhu. So when I had a little bit of this kind of misunderstanding with one of my senior, I was really disturbed. I said, how can this devotee pass a comment like this? Doesn't he know what all I do? How much hard work, blah, blah, blah. I was like this and I was really upset. Can you imagine when you're putting your best and somebody comes and tells you, such a lazy fellow. Yes or no? How many of you think you'll feel hurt? You're working hard. Imagine. And let's say you have been, you're coming for every morning program. I'm just giving hypothetically. And suddenly somebody, senior passing comment, this fellow never comes to morning program. You're like, every day I'm there. You're getting it. It hurts you more. And if there is a fact that you're not coming every day, then it is easy to tolerate because that's my fault. Because it's my fault, better I tolerate now. That time tolerating is very difficult. When you know you are wrong, right, and he's wrong, tolerating is very difficult, it becomes difficult. So therefore, when I had that issue, I went and spoke to my another senior. He said, Prabhu, we are all family, he might have misunderstood with you. Better go and talk to him. Have a candid conversation. And talk to him and talk it out and find it out what happened. If he misunderstands, you let him know. And yet he thinks, no, you are wrong. Then you accept it and say, Prabhu, please let me know how I can improve. I'll try to improve. Don't argue. But it is very essential for us to express ourselves and put our case study. So at least itna rahega ki maine bata diya. And now if this person is not willing to understand, then it is my karmic reaction. Now I have no other alternative to tolerate. And if yet we find it difficult to tolerate, then stop tolerating, because you cannot tolerate. Explosion would happen. Either change your service or move around like that. Is that okay? Is it kind of reconcile this discussion? Who had a question, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Am I audible, Prabhu?
Yes, Rakesh, go ahead.
Prabhu, in these kind of scenarios, can we show our anger as well? Can we be angry?
Oh, no. It's not a good thing at all. Not a good thing at all. Not a good thing. See, anger is arisen from mode of passion. And if you get affected by mode of passion, it's a matter of time when you will glide down to mode of ignorance. And the moment you have the slip, then you forget all Vaishnava philosophy. And then what happened at that point of time? Your old conditions rise up in your consciousness. And whichever language you have learned from your childhood, and then Desi Galia will come. The Desi Galia will fly in the sky, and everything goes into the drain. So, no. I mean, you have the right to be angry. You have the right to be angry, feel angry. But this is something we need to tolerate. Why to tolerate? Because this one action of mine will definitely displease my Guru. Because Srila Prabhupada, for that reason, of my special master, does not want conflicts between devotees. So I should tolerate this. But because there is a certain hurt feeling being created, I should definitely clarify. And you can take a day off, 1 day, 2 days, peacefully settle down, create your story, whatever story you have to tell him, and let that other person also get pacified. If you bump him then and there, you might get doubly, triply offended, because he may chastise you more. So this has to work in a little bit suitable environment like that. All right, Rakesh Prabhu? Okay, these hands are up for answers, so they have to say something. Please go ahead. Niha Prabhu, Nitai Pran Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Niha Prabhu.
So just sharing my realization on this, Prabhu, just quickly. So yeah, what I've done, Prabhu, this has happened to me because it's not been that long time since I've been involved in different services, and the first thing I did, I learned, is just talk to a senior, and straight away, it is such a small thing, but it's just because my mind is not trained, as you say. So instead of just getting wound up about it, just talk to a senior, go and talk to the person directly, and it's resolved. It's just a small thing. So instead of getting angry, as you say, if there's no point. It was such a small thing. But the more I think about it, the mind makes it a bigger issue, whereas there is no issue.
So my whole point here was, please never ever try to ignore your emotions. We will become emotionally and mentally wrecked. Please take my word seriously. I don't want to make any public comments right now. There are all kinds of devotee forum here. But we at an ISKCON also are facing with mental problems within devotee community. So I have a background. Why am I discussing on this point specifically among everything else? So we should not, there are a lot of cultural changes we need to bring in. Somehow we have certain upbringings, a certain understanding of things. Never ever hold on to your emotions. Learn the art of expressing your emotions. There should not be an abrupt explosion of your emotions that you blurt it out without paying any attention of etiquettes and what customs are not. And second, just do not keep on tolerating, saying that for the sake of tolerating, I should keep on tolerating. Yes, you can. Prahlad Maharaj did not tolerate. He was not even conscious of what was going on. Please understand, there were nowhere it is mentioned that Prahlad Maharaj is tolerating. I have not read any verse where it was said Prahlad Maharaj is tolerating what all his father was doing to him. He was not even conscious of it. Amrish Maharaj was not tolerating Durvasa Muni. Amrish Maharaj was in Samadhi. He was remembering, his mind was focused at the lotus feet of the Lord. So I don't remember anywhere any devotee was constantly tolerating for a long period of time. Yes, you can talk about Mother Kunti. She was tolerating. Yet, what was her level of devotion? Her tolerance was counteracted by her remembrance of the Lord. So to say we can continue tolerating, I am not really sure is going to work in a long run. If that has to be a statement, that statement has to be supported by, yes, tolerate, forget, because we have better things to do, because my mind is more attracted to thinking about Krishna. I don't get affected by it. I don't give a fig about it. Just like, Sukdev Goswami, when he went away from the house, people mistreated him. And when he entered the Sabha where Parshid was sitting, still people were mistreating him. But when he entered the Sabha and everyone got up and the king of the whole of Parshid got up, then the boys and the ladies who were running after Parikshit or the Sukdev Goswami, then they saw, we took a panga with the wrong guy. Yeah, the king of the world has gotten up. Vyasadevji has gotten up. Narad Muni has gotten up. Of course, Vyasadevji didn't got up. Narad Muni didn't got up. I mean to say, they all were there in the assembly. Then they understood. But Sukdev Goswami was hardly bothered, because he was more attracted towards the lotus feet of the Lord. In that sense, I was trying to bring a point here. Yes, Nitai, Pranpu, and Mother Taruni.
Haribol Prabhu, Dhanvat Pranam.
Yes,
so Prabhu, whatever principles that we discussed right now, they all goes well when we are in the community. Okay, when we know that the person who've been speaking to has got a same goal of achieving Krishna, and they can understand that what kind of forum we are in. Okay, so expressing our emotions and discussing with them, that's all goes well with them. But when we are not in the community, or when we are in the outside world, that's where the problem comes, because if we try to express our emotions to them, they will try to exploit us.
Then you can go and break the old cars in the barrages, take out frustration there. I'm just joking. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a blessing if that happens. And I would say we should rather pray that happens more, because it will destroy our attachment to this material world. But if it happens more often in the spiritual community, that's not a good thing. Because when this kind of things happen, we become averse. We develop a certain amount of detachment. So imagine if within devotee community it happens and we begin to develop a distance from them, where do we go? We go back to the material consciousness or material association. So when it is happening with the people outside, I see it as a blessing. And there we should definitely apply this formula, my karmic reaction by default. And do according to your best of your ability what you can do. Why? Because you still have shelter of devotees. You can always come back and you can talk to some devotees, this is what is happening, and the devotee can talk to you, tell you, pacify you. And it is good, because that's how you develop aversion. Otherwise, it's not easy to develop aversion. Of course, I'm not talking aversion. Main point is detachment. And that's how we become detached, when you understand the futility of this world. So that way, from my little humble understanding, it is a blessing in disguise.
All right. Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, one more thing. You said that it's good to express the emotions.
Oh, yes.
Rather than tolerating.
I'm going to become a social reformer for this, because this is becoming a big issue about it. Devotees are not talking out and they're holding on. This is not good. This is not good. Mm-hmm.
Prabhu, even anger is a kind of emotion as well.
Yes.
It's one
Very
form
much.
of emotion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been
These
quite...
all are emotions. Lust is also in that way an emotion. It's an energy. It's an energy that way, correct?
Yeah. So I'm just wondering that, see, since anger, happiness, these are the part of an emotion. So definitely, if something goes wrong, obviously anger is the first emotion. If it's not in our favor, that's the first emotion that's going to come out. Yeah, whether we've been speaking to a devotee or something who is non-devotee, that's the first emotion that is going to come out. So theoretically, it sounds very good to understand this thing, but practically, I feel it's been a little challenging to to control the anger if things goes wrong.
Now, therefore, here that dadati pratigranati guhyam akhyati prachati. This is where the Guhyamakati Prachiti becomes very, very important. Bhunkate bhojatai seva sadvidhi priti lakshanam. Text 4 of Nectar of Instruction. See, all that mental pressure would ease out when you have one trustworthy relationship where you know you can go and speak your mind out, yet you will not be judged. And more importantly, you can speak in the language in which you feel the most comfortable. Now, please understand a little deeper understanding of meaning of what I mean, language. I'm not just saying the language means speaking Hindi and English. Let me put it this way, bindas bolne ka hai. Because see what happens now, the first thing that we try to cover up about ourselves is try to present ourselves as a very nice person. Which may not have, I mean, of course, the nicety is again conditional. It can vary situation to situation, community to community. But we always have one idea about ourselves that we want to present the best of us to others. But there should be some relationship where we have a naked relationship. The person knows me what I am. Just like parents and the child. Can a child really hide something from the parents? Parents know everything about it. Of course, it's again good to speak about to have that relationship. This relationship does not come that easily. It involves a lot of investment of time and energy by both the parties and service attitude. And at that point of time, if I am a student in that relationship, there is a lot of tolerance that I have to undergo. Not the tolerance of the chastisement, tolerance of my own false ego in that relationship. Because when I'm corrected, what I'm supposed to tolerate. When I'm given a correction, I'm supposed to tolerate my false ego, which should be bursting out in flames. How dare he correct me? So that is another tolerance that we have to exercise on ourselves. So first of all, figure out if there is one relationship where you want to build a relationship with somebody, latch on to that person, and best way is start serving. And please do not try to superimpose your idea of how that person should be for you. As you have your needs and psychological understanding or needs, similarly, the other person also has his own psychology and thinking, feeling, willing. So please, first of all, understand who that person is, how service is done, how that person is get pleased by service. That way, things go smoothly. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. So this is a serious subject matter which involves time. But the problem is, who has time today? Everyone is busy. Preacher is busy. Jinko preach kara ja raha hai, wo bhi busy hai. Everyone is busy like that. And therefore, this whole devotee care thing came up in ISKCON, which has been going on for the last 15 years approximately. Devotee care. And there was a whole dedicated subject matter on emotions. We're going to come up with devotee care level 1 course also. I believe it should have been launched by now, where they talk about first aspect of devotee care is self-care. Unless there is a self-care, you cannot do devotee care. And for the aspect of self-care, the very important part of self-care, of course, bodily care is there, but more important than that is emotional care. To get our emotions handled properly. Those of us who are in India, we are quite comfortable. This challenge arises a lot those who are abroad. Those who have come to Krishna consciousness from entirely different background. And if there is a mentor for the such devotee, even they don't have any background understanding of that person, and that leads to a lot of issues. I don't know, those of you, maybe Vaikunthpati Prabhu is there and others are also there. Is there anyone, okay, let me ask this question. How many of you have you experienced in your devotional life or journey a sense of loneliness? Oh, I don't have anyone to talk to. I'm not saying you have to raise your hands here. That's okay. I don't have anyone to talk to here with whom I can open my heart. Can you imagine? Even in Krishna consciousness, you can have that experience of loneliness. And not that you had it. You might be going through now also. The most scary thing in this world is loneliness. And the trouble is going to come. So I would say keep everything aside. Find one relationship, invest your time there. Therefore, this is how I understand traditionally, the disciple would go and live with Guru and serve him personally. Just like a housewife and a husband. It's not the wife stays in neighbor's house and once in a while she comes. They both stay together. And through the service relationship, that love and affection develops. And service also done based on understanding the psychological needs of the other person. Not that I superimpose my understanding of service on him and I become the guru for the other person. It doesn't work like that. So this is something in that regard. Anyways, I don't know, I'm speaking too much on the subject. So I'll pause here. All right. Any comments on this or any other clarification?
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Vaikuntpati Prabhu, you want to add something?
I just want to add to what you said, Prabhu. Actually, in this group, everybody is very fortunate because everybody is having both devotee association as well as karmi association. You know? And that is, in a way, it's a blessing in disguise, because you see what happens is, even if in devotee association, if you start suddenly feeling lonely, you can run to your karmi friends and make up that loss. You know, it happens many times, because I've been in the movement for a very long time and I've seen this happening. And I've also seen many devotees who are in ashrams coming and talking to me very privately and saying that this is the issue they have got.
Correct.
I tell them, simply get married. That could also be a solution for you. You know,
correct.
Happen. And I say that I'm telling this, but go and talk to Guru Maharaj and see what it is like. Probably he will also, and Guru Maharaj also told them the same thing. If things will only then get married and lead a grahastha life. You know, this happens. It happens. What I said is 100% correct. Many devotees, especially when they reach that age of 35, 40, and if they are still brahmacharis, then they go through this middle-age problem.
Midlife crisis. And so here, I just want to add a point or kind of an addendum to what Prabhuji is saying. Of course, this is not a brahmachari forum, but just because devotees here online, the brahmacharis here, the point here that they need to understand, please don't burn up your relationship with your family members. Okay, maybe at the beginning it might be, but don't become so fanatic you think they are just some karmis. Try to patch that up, try to help them become Krishna conscious gradually, because parents are parents. And if they are able to take to Krishna consciousness, you don't know how much long their support will sustain you in your Krishna consciousness. Because ultimately, you can be lonely from anyone and everyone, but there is always one person who you can go and talk, your mother and your father. Even if not father, you can always go and talk to your mother. I'm living that, huh? My Lord, I'm fortunate, my whole family is devotees, so I can just call up my Jiju also, I can call up my sisters also, so it works out. That's the reason I'm kind of relaxed. But like those who have really burnt up and have not invested there, and I've really worked hard on that side, if they have not invested there, this is what happens. They don't find some friends in the ashram, and it's not that always easy. And then they have to find another ashram, as Prabhuji was saying. You know, like that. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So it apparently seems like with our conversation, we came to 1 o'clock and 25 minutes. And we were discussing about how to deal with insults now. And then we'll continue. Insult ka to ho gaya abhi hamara bada challenge hai. How to deal with our senses, which is the next subject. So we'll take a break here. It's almost 1:20. We are supposed to take a break, right? 12 o'clock, right? Class timing is up to 2:15. 15. Okay, we'll summarize the next discussion in 40 minutes like that. So we'll take a break here. It's 1:25. And I guess some of you might have already gone for break. So we'll only have a short break of 5 minutes. Okay, we'll come back at 1:30 and we'll resume them. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Something has got. Okay. Hare Krishna. So let's continue our discussion ahead. Let's go back to the presentation. So we were talking about, so what we have discussed so far is there are 4 questions asked by Arjuna to Lord Shri Krishna. And the 4 questions are, the first question, symptoms. How does he reveal his position? How does he reveal his position? First, such a person is detached from sense gratification. And second, such a person is always engaged in serving Krishna or is happy serving Krishna in that way. Second, speech. So speech refers to how does he respond to situations, and that is what we were discussing. He doesn't become super excited, elated when things go according to him, and he doesn't become very depressed when he doesn't achieve success. And then the 57th verse was about dealing with insults and praises. When we are praised, generally we become proud. When we are insulted, we really become offended. So we were discussing for last few minutes about how to handle insult, how to deal with it. When it comes to handling praise, Srila Prabhupada actually in the previous purport we read it. When somebody praises it, all right, all mercy of Guru and Gauranga. It is by their mercy. It's very important to deflect the praise, because otherwise if we hold the praise, then that praise will lead to pride. So a devotee is a good deflector. Somebody praises him, oh, what a wonderful kirtan, oh, what a wonderful class. Deflect. All mercy of Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we immediately give the credit. Now, are we wrong giving a credit? If it was not for Srila Prabhupada, if it was not for our spiritual master and the devotees, would we be able to speak anything? Would we be able to do any kirtans? Everything we have learned after coming to Krishna consciousness. So why fail to give a credit? So we should not fail to give a credit. We should not shy away like that. Even if you're not externally able to say, but internally it is very important for us to do it. And that establishes a culture of gratitude. So that's what we have discussed so far. Let's go to the third question, which Arjuna had asked, for which Lord Shri Krishna gives an answer in verse number 58 and 59. So how does such a person sit? Asita. Which means, how does he control his senses? The word is not controlled, the word is restrains, which means how he limits. So Lord Shri Krishna says in verse number 58 and 59, first, he withdraws from sense objects. And a beautiful analogy is given of tortoise. Whenever the tortoise senses any fear, he withdraws his limbs within his body. Second, he follows the rules and regulations, yamas and niyamas. And third, it is easy for a devotee to practice because he has developed higher taste. Param drashtva nivartate. So this is a very, very difficult thing, even for the most famous personality on the YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. Which means you can be a film star, you could be a sports star, or you could be a politician or whatnot. To be able to control the senses is In fact, for them, is close to impossible. A classic example is of, let's say, Ravana. Ravana, Kumbhakarna, all of them went and performed austerities for hundreds and thousands of years. And how do you perform austerity? By controlling your mind and senses? They could control the mind and senses for hundreds and thousands of years, but when he got the boon, what did he do? He became victimized by his own senses. Therefore, he kidnapped Mother Sita. Mandodari came and said, Vibhishan said, even Kumbhakarna said, Kya kiya aapne? And it is not that he was bachelor, frustrated bachelor. He was already married. Mandodari, the most chaste lady, most beautiful woman, and plus he had already had picked up women from different parts of the world, not the world, different parts of the universes. He was so much controlled over by senses, and what became the cause of his fall down. So yoga, or the yoga practice, the very first step is restraining senses. I'll speak on the subject matter more in third chapter when the subject matter is more elaborated by Lord Shri Krishna in the last section of third chapter. But we'll focus here what Krishna says in terms of an introduction. So chapter number 2, verse number 58, where Lord Shri Krishna gives an example of how a tortoise withdraws. Let's read the Sanskrit. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani va sarvashaha indriyani indriyartebhya tasya prajna pratishtata. One is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell is firmly fixed in a perfect consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada gives a beautiful purport to it. So somebody please read out. I'm not able to see anyone's hands here, so I would request our admins to facilitate. Yes?
Yeah, Nihar Prabhu, please.
So, Hare Krishna. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpents like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do nots and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness.
So when Krishna said like this, 58th and 59th verse, that a self-realized person controls his senses, so Arjuna immediately thought, oh, don't you know, Lord, I have a great restraining power. I restrain my senses. When? What happened in Indralok? Mataji Urvashi आई थी. Urvashi Mataji had come to give her darshan to Arjuna. And what did Arjuna said? My dear mother, I see you as a mother. And Urvashi became offended. That's a different story. Who is Urvashi? Urvashi is a beautiful woman, that is understood. I mean, I'm just laughing because somebody those devotees were sitting here, one of them said, Urvashi means the beautiful woman. That is understood. Uru means thighs. Okay, Uru means thighs. Urvashi, the one who is born of the thighs. Whose thighs? She was born of the thighs of Nar Narayan Rishi. She is not of the birth of this world. She is born of the Lord. And when Urvashi appeared, Cupid fainted. When Urvashi appeared, Cupid fainted. Please understand the gravity of the subject matter. She was not only a beautiful woman. When Urvashi appeared, so Indra had sent his Cupid and the Apsaras to distract Narayan Rishi who were performing tapasya Badrinath, like that. And when they came and started performing their leelas to, induce lust in the heart of Narayan Rishi, so they were in samadhi, they didn't do anything. But of course, Narayan Rishi is none other than Arjuna and Krishna. When the Lord understood that, he, from his body, manifested many. And first of all, the came was Urvashi. And everyone fainted, even the other Apsaras fainted, seeing Urvashi's beauty. And the Lord said, take this with you. So she was very dear to Indra in that sense. It was very, very beautiful like that. The story comes later on in 9th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, What is that? Urvashi got married to whom? When she was cursed, she came down to earth. And Pururuva, if I'm correct, right? Pururuva and Urvashi, right? That's the time. Anyways, that's a different story. So Arjuna says, my dear Lord, I have a great restraining power. I can say no to any demands of the senses. Krishna says, well, wait a second. And he answers that in verse number 60. But before we go there, let's just a little bit look at it, what our Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has to see on this particular discussion. But we can see that the fool who is sick, lazy, or fasting also restrains his senses. How can this be the outstanding quality of Siddha Prajna? So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is raising a question that Arjuna might ask this question to Krishna, my dear Lord, you're saying restraining senses is the quality of a Siddha Prajna. The beggar on the streets of Hinjawadi or the Bombay, he might be eating once in a day. He's better sense control than you and I, who eat 3 times, 5 times, depending on what's your size of belly. Yes or no? But that fellow on the street may be eating once. So how can sense control be one of the qualities or the foremost quality of Siddha Prajna? That's a question has been asked. So for that, Lord answers 59th verse. Vishaya vinivartante nirasya dehina raso varjam rasopyasya param drashtva nivartate. Yes, that is not the outstanding quality. In fact, the outstanding quality is rasovarjam. They have lost the taste and they have developed higher taste. That is an outstanding quality. So then comes verse number 60. As we were talking about it right now, in the context of, Arjuna may say that I have a lot of sense control. Don't you know that? So text number 60, Lord Shri Krishna says, if Arjuna would ask this question like this, Krishna answers. This is how Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur will always write his commentaries in a kind of a conversation way. And Krishna says, Yatato hi api kanteya purushasya vipashyataha indriyani pramatini haranti prashabham manaha. Oh, senses are very strong, impetuous. They will drag down even a man of discrimination. Oh, Arjuna. Senses are so strong, Baldev Vidyabhushan says, that they can surpass even knowledge. An example? Ajamil. What was he doing? He was hiding behind the tree. He was reciting shlokas. He will look again. Oh, no, this is not right. And he'll again recite shlokas. Sounds familiar? Sounds familiar? That's the point. Senses are so strong that they cannot. Look at the pictures here, You see in the picture Vishwamitra Muni sitting underneath the sun and getting attracted to Menka, if I'm correct. That was the thing. Then you see here our, Durvasa Muni, who became very angry at Amrish Maharaj. And at the bottom you see Amrish Maharaj, engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord like that. This example is given. So here, man of discrimination refers to a jnani, when Krishna is talking about here in this particular shloka, text number 60, who endeavors to curb his senses simply on the strength of his own philosophical understanding and mental conviction. Krishna contrasts this kind of a struggle with the simplicity and ease by which a devotee remains aloof from the sensual entanglement. Amrish Maharaj, he didn't get angry only, although he had the right. What happened when Durvasa Muni plucked his hair and threw it on the ground and a big demon was born? Amrish Maharaj's folded hand was started to meditate on the Lord. Whatever Lord wants, so be it. And then what happened when the Sudarshan Chakra came and saved and all that and everything, that Durvasa Muni came and fell, kind of fell at the feet of Amrish Maharaj? Yet Amrish Maharaj was not proud. Oh, see, what a great devotee I am. Durvasa Muni is fallen at my feet. He was thinking how compassionate. While looking at Sudarshan Chakra, he was so pleased. The Lord has shown me his darshan. He was again thinking of Lord only, like that. And he was saying, no, you have not done anything wrong. Something happened. This is like kind of his attitude was. Durvasa Muni, something happened. As if he had no idea what has happened. Like that is being described here as a devotee is aloof from sensual entanglement. How? First, in devotional sense control, one does not become frustrated by inactivity, because he engages all of the senses in regulated devotional activity. Who can be a better example than Amrish Maharaj? All his senses engaged in serving the Lord. That's the point he mentioned. Second, Krishna conscious activities bring true peace and lasting happiness. Krishna conscious activities. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam. If we are fortunate enough to develop some attraction for Shravanam and Kirtanam, it's a big success. It's a big success. When I say develop attraction, which means losing taste for hearing and talking about other subject matters, it's a profound success for a bhakta. I mean, he would not need anything else. That is what is mentioned. That happens through a steady and consistent service. One who does not engage the senses in Krishna's service eventually falls down into material consciousness, as the mind and senses are not satiated by mere repression. Like that, Srila Prabhupada also mentions in his purport. Please read the last paragraph of the text number 60, the purport. Text 60, last paragraph. So many hands up. Madam Medhavni, go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, the last paragraph.
Okay. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaja Ambarisha also conquered a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachamchi vaikunta gunanuvarnane.
Yeah. And so what's our solution for this? Krishna will give. Let's take a look at the PPT ones. So mind and sense control is what is being discussed from text number 62, 63. So in text number 60, we saw senses are very strong. So Arjuna wanted to tell Krishna that, don't worry Krishna, my senses are very controlled. Don't you know my sense control, how I exhibited in Indraloka? So Krishna wants Arjuna here. Arjuna, if you prematurely renounce your duties and try to control the senses by force, such a person will fall down. But now question comes, so how can we control our senses? So Krishna will speak about it in text number 61. What is the solution for controlling our senses? And then Krishna would explain how, if a person does not follow the solution given in text number 61, how he becomes victim of his senses. The process of fall down being described in 62 and 63rd verse. Baldev Vidyabhushan says, verse 60 spoke of the senses taking away the mind by force to sense objects. 62 and 63 describe the effects when the mind has got attached to the sense objects. What happens? The effect has been described in 62 and 63 like that. So let's take a look. Text number 61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasindriyani tasya prajna pratishtata. Tasya prajna, consciousness, pratishtata, is said to be fixed. Tani sarvani samya, at all times being able to keep his senses under control. How? Yukta asita matparaha. Yukta means connecting. When a person engages his senses, yukta asita matparaha, with the Lord. And how it happens? Through service. What happens then? Vashehi yasya indriyani. At that point, he can naturally control his senses. So how the control of senses happens? When the senses are yukta asita matparaha. When the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, which means matparaha, unto him, then vashehi, automatically senses gets control. Please read out the translation, somebody. Lati Manjari Mataji, please read. Translation.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam.
And verse.
One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence.
Yes. And then Srila Prabhupada in the purport quotes example of Ambrish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni, which we discussed already. And then he quotes those famous three shlokas from 9th canto, how Ambrish Maharaj had engaged all his senses in the service of the Lord, like that. Okay. So if you go at the end of the purport, Prabhupada makes a point from, I believe this is according to Yoga Sutras, the last few lines of the purport. Ratimanji Mataji, please read out. The Yoga Sutras also prescribes.
Yes, Hare Krishna. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something which is not on the Vishnu platform simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of the real yoga.
Yes, thank you. Now we continue. What happens when a person is not able to control his senses or his mind is attached to sense objects? That is being described in text number 62-63. Dhyayasho visayan pumsa sangaste supajayate sangas sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate krodha bhavati sammoha sammoha smriti vibramaha smriti brahmasad buddhinasho buddhinasha pranashyati. So 8 things. I'll be quick with this verses here. What's happening here? Dhyayato Vishyan Pumsa. It all begins with contemplation. Contemplation of what? Vishayan. Very interesting. Sense objects are called in Sanskrit as Vishayan. Vishayan, who gives you Visha, who awards you poison, is what sense objects are called in Sanskrit. Interestingly, huh? Dhyayato, contemplation, Pumsa, by the living being on the sense objects, results into Sangas. Sangas. Tesu upajayate, he attains. While contemplation of the sense object, he attains sangas, which means attachment. What the sangas does? Sangas sanjayate kamaha, then he awards you kama, which means kind of desire to have it, that I am going to have it. And then kamat krodho vijayate, and that kama results into krodha. Who can protect me or prevent me from fulfilling my desire? And then what happens? Krodha bhavati sammoha, and this krodhas results into delusion, and delusions sammoha smriti vibramaha. With this, the loss of memory, or in other words, your memory becomes bewildered. Smriti brahmasad buddhinasho, and when your memory is covered over, then intelligence falls. Intelligence buddhinasho is destroyed. What means by memory is covered over? Memory covered over means you forget all the sufferings you had to go through when you had engaged in those sense with the sense object. For example, let's say a man who drinks an alcohol, and if he overdrinks, I don't know exactly what situation they throw up in the morning, but I do remember seeing our college friends, people back in America. Oftentimes, when they would have their parties in the night, they would be very happy. But when they would wake up in the morning, most of the time these people will go and throw up in the bathroom. They will vomit and they'll have a headache. So loss of memory, sammoha smriti vibramaha, loss of memory is about this. They forget about the suffering. They only remember what I would get out of it. And they forget about the suffering. And when they forget about the suffering, till the time they remember the suffering, intelligence saying, how can you do it? You're going to suffer. But once they smriti vibramaha, once they lose memory, then intelligence cannot discriminate now. That's the reason, buddhinasha. And what happens? Buddhinashat pranashyati. Such a person falls down. So contemplation on sense objects is unavoidable. Why it is unavoidable? Because on account of our past impressions, mind already has unlimited desires, and we have engaged in sense objects for all these unlimited lifetimes. So to contemplate on sense object, please understand, it is impossible to give up. What is possible to give up is change the subject of contemplation. We cannot stop contemplation. So the best way to do it, when you wake up in the morning, take one shloka and try to memorize it. When you get into the shloka recitation, shloka memorization habit, which I am struggling for a good amount of time now because of my little bit of life and challenges with the schedule, but I used to do it before. Wake up in the morning, take a shloka, and for Bhagavad Gita we have this 108 shlokas like that. Pick one shloka and learn it. Now when you try to learn it, what will happen? We know that shloka can only memorize by repetition. And during the day, let's say you're getting distracted or mind is not thinking something, start reciting shloka. And you'll notice in the beginning you're not able to capture the shloka only. then what will happen? Your mind has got an engagement. And imagine by the end of the day, you have memorized shloka. Next day, you will definitely want to do it because now I have achieved something which I never thought I could do in my life. Learn shlokas. Many devotees struggle with that. That is a good way of creating or changing your object of contemplation. Otherwise, to give up contemplation is not possible like that. And then when we have a wrong contemplation, then attachment is but obvious. That's what happens. Then desire is kama, who can stop me? I want to have it. Then anger, who can stop me? Then delusion, I've already talked about it, loss of discrimination and all that. And then failure of memory, it means the impressions of the earlier effects are forgotten about. And then buddhinasha, then finally pranashati, which means relapse. The person again commits the same thing. What is the cure for this? The cure is the first stage, contemplation. We should somehow distract ourselves from contemplating on the wrong things, because of which we get into relapse. And therefore, before this comes, what is mentioned before that? Param drashva nivartate. We should develop liking for something. Maybe it could be shloka recitation, or maybe start writing a diary every day, where you know what good, what bad, things like that. So something on that positive side, we should do it. All right, let's move forward. Now, the next and the last question which was asked by Arjuna was walking. How does he engage his senses? That is what being discussed. Walking, text number 64 to verse number 71 is talked about. Such a person, Sita Pragya, he engages his senses to serve Krishna. He does it with regulation and religious principles, like that has been described. So, principles of freedom, very beautiful verses are there now. So he does it. He does this, again I'll repeat, two things to mention. Serves Krishna, this is how he engages his senses, and he restrains his senses with the regulation and religious principle. So text number 64 talks about restraining senses through regulation. Raga dvesha vimuktastu vishayan indriyascharan atma vashye vidhi atma prasadam adhigacchati. Raga dvesha vimuktastu, giving up attachment and aversion. Such a person able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. It is said regulative principles of freedom. Something to note, the four regulative principles that we follow, they are called as regulative principles of freedom. Many times people in our community, you'll find, in our community means those who understand Hinduism or those who are following or practicing Hinduism, maybe through because of his birth, oftentimes they say there are so many rules and regulations. Other religions are very simple. Why? Kuch bhi karo. So there is no rules and regulation. But in our culture, there are so much rules and regulation. So I always make this simple analogy to help them understand this verse number 64. And I'll just repeat it here in this forum also. Imagine you're playing a soccer game. What do you need for playing a soccer? You need a football, you need a goalpost, and you need an opponent. Of course, that's how the football happens. Imagine you're playing that. You have the goalpost, you have the football, and you have your team with whom you're playing. However, there is no boundary. How many of you agree after 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, or maybe let's say 40 minutes of game, you might end up playing football in some different part of the city? Raise your hand. Yes or no? Which means now you don't even have a sight of the goalpost. For which you were playing football, even that sight of goalpost is missing. So the rules and regulation keeps us focused to our goal. The boundary allows us to play our soccer game nicely, and that is how the enjoyment comes. So these rules or regulation, as Krishna mentions, are regulative principle of freedom, which in the case of a soccer game, you can only enjoy the soccer game when there is a boundary. If there is no boundary, you cannot enjoy. That's how Krishna says regulative principles of freedom. They are meant to help us and make us advance. Second example that Prabhupada often speaks in his classes is when a patient is sick, then doctor advises certain reservations, certain restrictions, and this restrictions is helpful for that person to recover. And that is how those things can be considered as the regulative principles of freedom, because once you follow it, then you recover your health and then you have an experience of freedom. Like that, Prabhupada would explain that. That is verse number 64. Okay, now comes the famous verse of Bhagavad Gita and most often quoted. What is that? Prasad sarva dukkhana. You honor prasadam and all dukkha goes away. But that is not the prasadam which is discussed here. It is not about Sunday fish prasadam. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajáyate prasanna chetaso hiyashu buddhihi paryavatishtate. 65th translation. Anyone would like to read out? Please quickly go ahead. Mother Anjana, your hand is up. Go ahead. Translation. I hope you have a copy of Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
Sixty-fifth verse.
Translation.
Yeah.
One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can
No,
have
65. Mother 65.
Okay.
Second chapter.
For one, the satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established.
So, prasada sarva dukkhanam. Prasadam refers to mercy of the Lord. One who has received mercy of the Lord, sarva dukkhanam. Three things are mentioned here. What are the three things? This is a verse for joyful living. One who has received the mercy of the Lord, three things happen with them. First, complete satisfaction of the senses and consciousness. He cannot think of sense gratification. His senses do not get distracted. Second, adhyatmika, adhibhautika, adhidevika klesha does not exist for him, which means they exist, but he does not get affected. And the third, intelligence is soon well established. Intelligence soon well established means buddhi yoga, which means he is firmly fixed in serving the Lord. Like that it is mentioned. And then what happens to those who are not connected to Krishna consciousness or not connected with the Lord? Text number 66 and 67, what Krishna says, Nasti buddhir ayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavyatha shantir ashantasya kutha sukham. Text number 67, Indriyanam charatam yanmano anuvidyate tadasya harati pragyam vayunavam nivambasi. Mother Anjana, go ahead and read the translation of 66 and 67 verse also.
One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace?
Next.
As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away man's intelligence.
Yes, so 5 things Lord Shri Krishna mentions here. What happens? One who is not connected with the Lord, such a person is always hankering. No intelligence, transcendental intelligence possible, nor steady mind. Without steady mind, there is no possibility of peace, no happiness without peace, and search for satisfaction drags one deep into illusion. Therefore, our first topic for the beginners is search for happiness. Because everyone is searching for happiness, and such a person is always hankering more. So it all begins from the 5th point. It's in reverse order actually. When search for satisfaction drags into, so when one understands that my happiness arises, just like example is given, is of the body. We are nothing but like a different bodily limbs of the Lord. Just like the hand which feeds the mouth and the body nourishes, and the stomach digests it, and then it sends nourishment to the rest of the body. Similarly, our satisfaction comes by serving the Lord. And when we serve the Lord, please the Lord, to the degree. Okay, let me make a point here now. This is something which I heard from one of my seniors long ago, and really a profound statement he said. And he said, our satisfaction, he made a point, I'm paraphrasing it, and the point was, how do we know if Krishna is pleased with us? If we are firmly situated in Krishna consciousness. If we are happy, we are happily serving, we're happy to chant, we're happy to serve, which means it's a healthy state of our Krishna consciousness. And that healthy state of Krishna consciousness is happening because of Krishna's pleasure. Krishna is pleased, therefore I am feeling the sense of nourishment. Imagine a person whose stomach is not able to digest food. How much you feed, the stomach is not able to digest. The hand picks up the food, puts it to the mouth, but body is not able to digest. Then hand begins to feel weak. Yes? Similarly, all those who are feeling weak in their spiritual life, all those who are struggling in their spiritual life, have to take a break and think about the relationship with the Lord. Where am I going wrong? What wrong I am doing because of which I am not finding this tushti and pushti, nourishment and satisfaction. That is a point here which is being discussed. All right? They always hankers. And then 68 to 72 verse is all about peace formula. Let's see what we have in 68 verse. That's 69. So let's recite 68 verse, then we'll come to 69th. 68 verse. Tasmad yasya mahabhaho nigritani sarvashah indriyan indiyartebhyas tasya prajna pratishtata. So who all we have here? Shashwat Prabhu, please read out. 66 verse translation.
66 Prabhu.
Yes.
One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind.
Sorry, 68. I said it wrong. 68, I meant.
Therefore, O mighty aunt, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence.
Yeah, Krishna is repeating this point. You notice in the same chapter. So something which means very important. Who senses are restrained from the objects certainly of steady intelligence. And now comes another very beautiful verse of this chapter. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munihe. This verse talks about the difference between the theist and atheist, devotees and non-devotees. And the difference is not little difference. The difference is as much as day and night. Ya nisha sarva bhutana, when it is night for the living entities, tasyam jagrati samyami, for the self-realized person, it's a time of waking up. Yasyam jagrati bhutani, when all of the living entities wake up, sa nisha pashyato mune, it's a time for sleeping, taking rest. So again, the difference is exhibited in what? Not in our external parameters, is in our consciousness. In other words, we cannot have similarities in our likings. You getting it? There cannot be a common ground in our likings and dislikings. What they like, Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami, is what we dislike. And what we like is what they dislike. Is that much difference? It's not a small difference. Of course, we are living in still, there is some Vedic culture present in India, so there could be some common ground here and there. But one thing is there, even if there is some common ground, but it is always karma kanda. It is never about serving Krishna. This thought only never arises that I am supposed to serve God. The prevalent thought, the most acceptable thought is just go and put 2 rupee coin in the hundi and ask the Lord to fulfill your desires. He is your order supplier, yes or no? This is what our understanding. So like that, there is a whole difference here which is being expressed in the text number 69. And then text number 70 and 71. The real peace formula. What is that? Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sa shanti mapnoti na kamakami. Please read out the translation. Tejas Prabhu, would you like to read the translation of 70th verse?
A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enters like river into the ocean, which is ever filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
So, very beautiful analogy is given here. The desires are like, the waves in the ocean, in one sense. So, not getting disturbed by those is what is said to be man of steady intelligence. In other words, there's another analogy which is given. We should become like an ocean. Ocean is compared to gravity in certain analogies in our scriptures. Deep like ocean. Even if there is a turbulence, it is up on the shore. It is not within the depth. So devotee is like an ocean means, is grave like an ocean means, he becomes like ocean, which is when you go inside the ocean, it's completely still. That is what is mentioned. So who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires. Again, I don't think so there would be any condition in our life, as far as I understand the subject matter, at any point of time, as long as we have this material body, that will be freed from material desires. Because of so much conditioning. Some desires suddenly will pop out. And you'll think, for last 20 years I never thought like this. From where it came? It does not matter from where it came. It does not matter what came. It matters is you don't worry about it. You don't reflect on it, think about it. That is the point here. And continue moving on with your respective responsibilities. Text number 71. And here comes the peace formula. Vihaya kaman yasarvan pumam charti nispraha nirmamo nirangara sa shantim adhigachati. Tejas Prabhu, continue reading.
A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace.
Yeah. So, our project, impossible. How many of you see this is mission impossible now? To give up all material desires. A person who can all desire for sense gratification, lives free from the desire. So this is real mission impossible. Whatever they show in Hollywood, I don't know what they show. But this is actually real mission impossible. But this is not mission impossible for devotees. Like Yashoda Mai trying to bind Krishna was a mission impossible. Yet at the end of the day, late afternoon, she was able to do it. Why? Krishna allowed. So perseverance is a very important quality that as a devotee we need to cultivate. Perseverance, consistency. Continue on, continue on. And Krishna would say, "Arey yaar, bada hi jiddi aadmi hai. Theek hai, I award you, no problem." Like in Hindi we say sanki. It's good to be sanki. In English you can call it crazy. Imagine Mother Yashoda tried for a whole day tying Krishna. Anyone would say, sanki ho gayi hai. She has become crazy. No, so that kind of thing is okay. It's good. That's the point. So that's consistency, perseverance like that. There's a beautiful example of His Holiness Indradumna Swami Maharaj, disciple, if I remember correctly, of a lady who went on distributing Prabhupada books for close to 25 or 30 years like that. And this is Russian disciple, and she would go out on the street and distribute books. And in those days it was, communist regime. What's happening? In those days it was a communist regime. So of course there is also a communist regime now, but they would not allow any kind of religious books to be distributed. So she would have to distribute book in hiding. And she went ahead and did it. For years together, either be cold, be summer, whatnot, and most part of the Russia generally is cold. There's a heavy snowfall that happens. So it was described about this devotee that after 10 years of her perseverance, the police people got so affected by her consistency that so many times we have caught this lady. She again comes up. Then they said, you continue on distributing, we allow you. They allowed her. And she can easily go and distribute books. They said, because you're doing this service, there's nothing much you're gaining out of it. There must be something, which means some God's inspiration to you, which is inspiring you like this. So please continue doing like that. So that's the thing mentioned. And finally, the 72nd verse. Esha brahmi site partha nainam prapya vimuyati sthitva syamantakaalepi brahma nirvana marchati. That is the way of the spiritual and the godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Khatvanga Maharaj example is given in the purport. Please read from the middle part of the purport where you find a line, actual life. Hai Nam Krishna Prabhu, you read out please. On the middle of the purport, you'll see actual life begins after the contemplation of this material life. The first paragraph of the 72nd verse.
The actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God.
That's it. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. So the real peace, 71 and 72. We need to give up all desires for sense enjoyment and sense of proprietorship. And the result is kingdom of Godhead. Finally, Krishna concludes, such a person is never disturbed. And this is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which there is no bewilderment. What is the practical application of these things that we are discussing here? First, the second point came first. Okay, the first point, beware of senses. The last section from verse number 60 onwards, what we're discussing, these are some 8-9 points were written here. So first application, we should be careful of the senses. Like a tortoise, we should not contemplate or engage our senses with the sense objects. Senses are like a venomous snakes. Second, artificial repression does not help. Although artificially restraining, param drishtva nivartate, unless that has happened, one cannot do it for longer time. Third, Lord's grace. Senses cannot be controlled by any human endeavor, but only by engaging in the service of the Lord. That is how we can control the senses. The fourth application point, Krishna conscious activities brings true peace and lasting happiness. So how do we control senses? By engaging in Lord's service. Tani sarvani samyamya. One cannot enjoy life. Even slight agitation makes him fall down, which means one who do not follow the path of Bhakti Yoga, or one who do not take to Krishna consciousness or spiritual life, let's make it more general, let's say spiritual life for that reason, such a person cannot have any happiness. Why? Time and again he becomes a victim of his senses, and he regrets again and again. Imagine waking up in the morning and throwing up into the bathroom, or having a headache. Is that enjoyment? And for that suffering, you paid heavy price previous evening. You had to spend good amount of money to get that suffering like that. 6, complete satisfaction of senses and happiness is achieved by Lord's grace. Prasadam sarva dukkhana. 7th, no peace. Unless we have the relationship with the Lord, there could not be any question of peace. We discussed about the 5 things, right? 66, 67 verse like that. 8, proof of a Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclination for material sense gratification, though the desires are present. There's a text number 70, 71 was it? Incessant flow of desires. Maybe the desires getting but you're not attracted anymore to it. You lost taste for it. That is an evidence of Krishna conscious man. And to come to the conclusion here, in this chapter, which is one of the biggest chapter of this Bhagavad Gita, the first 9 verses we saw Arjuna accepting shelter of Krishna, and then Krishna began to speak, and from 11 to 30th verse there was a discussion of the Sankhya philosophy, you're not the body but spirit soul. Then 31 to 38 verse there was discussion of karma kanda, you should do your work so that you get results and enjoy life, do it for your sake. Then Krishna says in the next section 39 to 53, greater than working for your own pleasure is working for Lord's pleasure, Krishna's pleasure. That is called as philosophy of Buddhi Yoga, where how the work is performed, you do your duty dutifully with concentration, but remain detached from the results. Results are not for me to enjoy. Bhoktaram yagatapasam, and like that. And this is Buddhi Yoga, 5 benefits of Buddhi Yoga that we already discussed like this. And finally, the last section which we discussed today is about the 4 questions that Arjuna asked. The general symptoms, he's detached and he's engaged. And then how does he sit, which means how he controls his senses, how he restrains his senses, like that. Example of tortoise was given. And then how does he talk, which means how does he respond to the situation. It's like he's equipoised. He doesn't cry when suffering is there. He doesn't become super excited when happiness is there. And then finally, how does he walk? In other words, how does he engage his senses? That was the last discussion from verse number 16 onwards. And finally, how does Krishna defeat 5 arguments of Arjuna here? I'm not going to speak out. We have already discussed. This is just a theoretical part, or this is something academic, you can say. You can see in the slide deck, which will be uploaded by today or tomorrow on your student portal. So the soul compassion is counted in 27-28. Enjoyment in the Karma Kanda section was counted. Family traditions were counted in 37 to 43rd verse. Neha Vikramana Ashwasi, like those verses. And then fear of sins, Krishna already mentioned, was in this thing Karma Kanda section also. And 5th verse. If Arjuna fights without being attached to the results of this fighting simply because Krishna's desire, with his mind focused on Krishna, he will be freed from all the sinful reactions and indecision. Hey, wait a second. Sorry, I have not given verses here. I got confused. The verses here are of the verse number is of the questions, where the question has been raised. That's why I'm wondering why the verse number doesn't relate to the answers actually here. I will redo it and I'll send you where the answers are given. But answers, we have written it here. But these are where the question was asked like that. And like this, we come to the conclusion of our 2nd chapter. Please, Vaikuntpati Prabhuji, if you're there, you can read the conclusion. Please read out.
Arjuna should fight was established by the Lord in the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita. The physical activity thus being settled, the Lord will gradually add Arjuna's motivation from Karma Kanda through Karma Yoga to pure Bhakti. The 2nd chapter revealed the real nature of the soul. In the next chapters, the Lord will explain the method to realize this nature by, I can't read below.
Next Karma, by Karma Yoga, like that is discussed. Thank you. So chapter 1, we saw how Arjuna at the battlefield become bewildered and he raised 4 doubts. These were the 4 doubts or questions or kind of reasons he gave he's not going to fight. And then in the 2nd chapter we saw Arjuna surrendering to the Lord, and then Krishna instructs Arjuna in the 2nd chapter. And with this, 2nd chapter ends here. However, chapter 3, why the chapter 3 has to be there? Chapter 3 begins with Arjuna's inquiry, and it is about which is better, to engage in war, that is to do my duty, or to renounce my duty. He is confused what Krishna wants him to do. Arjuna wants to give up his Swadharma, but Krishna tells Arjuna to work. Like that, our chapter 3 begins, titled as Karma Yoga. And it begins with Arjuna's confusion. Arjuna, where he has confused Buddhi Yoga with Jnana Yoga. Arjuna thought Buddhi Yoga to be meditation program in the forest. So here we'll see what Arjuna asked, and then Lord Shri Krishna would answer what it means. So Bhagavad Gita is not about leaving Bhagavad Gita is about living your life beautifully. Bhagavad Gita will teach us, or Krishna will tell us, to perform our duty with enthusiasm and for the pleasure of the Lord. And we'll continue this discussion next week when we meet. There are around 43 verses in the chapter 3, and this is the acronym for chapter 3, which I would explain you next week when we meet and take a discussion forward. With that, we come to a conclusion for today's discussion. Thank you all for your kind attention. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Where is our audience here? Yes. Any questions or clarifications here? I do see we are a little over time here, but if in case anyone... So classes you can consider officially ended, but if anyone has anything to share or ask, we can discuss that. Chintamani Mataji, you have your hand up.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I had this doubt, like you were talking about not to tolerate in all circumstances and not to repress our emotions, but express it to somebody with whom you are close. Like, I just wanted one clarification, because we are also told not to criticize. So when we go and tell somebody, does it tantamount to criticism, or what is the difference between criticism and sharing your heart with somebody?
Mother, it all depends on our level of maturity in Krishna consciousness. Again, it's all about learning the art of presenting our emotions properly also. So let's consider the case that you're presenting here of criticism. If somebody, while sharing his feelings, happens to criticize other devotee, that this devotee did like this to me, please imagine how much criticism his mind would already be creating for him. And if he does not go and talk, can you imagine for such a person, it will become a mental case. Because right now, see, the nature of the mind is he keeps on building up the story. Now his mind is criticizing this much. Imagine how much he will continue to build on stories. He's like this only, or she's like this only. So I would say it's okay. See, now here comes the maturity of the listener. So this is where actually the mentor has to have the whole control on the situation. How he kind of navigates with the student in terms of asking appropriate questions and ensuring that the person gives appropriate answers, how much to hear and when to cut it out. The moment it goes into the criticism, the mentor has the right to say, Prabhu, let's not go about finding fault with the other person. Why don't you tell me what are you feeling? How are you feeling, or what's your emotion? Let's talk about that. And what happened? Say it as a neutral party. We'll draw conclusions later on. So that's how we can a little bit tailor-made it and a little bit manage the whole conversation. But mother, imagine if the person has the ability to criticize through his mouth, what would be happening in his mind and what could continue happen in his mind if that doesn't happen. This is what I think I did. What would you like to say on this?
No, that's what I just wanted to clarify, because where is the demarcating line between criticism and sharing your...
Correct.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we can say there's an art of expressing our emotions also. Just like when we talk about giving feedback, there's a sandwich formula we talk about generally when we have to give feedback to other. The sandwich formula is, first you find out what is the nice thing. Then you interject and say, Prabhu, this is the area of improvement. And then you again end with nice thing. So when this kind of meetings have to happen, you can define your rules. Prabhu, if something happened, yes, Prabhu, I'm hurt. Okay, great. Prabhu, let's talk in these lines. First of all, you want to highlight something good about that person, then share your concerns. Something like that, we can define the rules and then have it. But I still feel expression should be allowed, or at least person should do it, because that person otherwise is going to explode someday and create much bigger trouble for himself or herself.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mother. Mother Medhavni, your hand is up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danat Pranam. Thank you for the wonderful session, Prabhu. If in case you think that my question will be confusing for others, then you might tell me, I can ask you offline. Can I ask?
I mean, I don't know how your question is confusing if I don't know the question only, right?
Yeah. So I'll just ask my question in case
You can make the question simple, so then it will not become confusing.
Okay.
Just tell the question without telling into the history or the background of the question. What's the question?
Okay. So, Prabhu, okay, the question is, so, Prabhu, I have two questions, Prabhu. The first question is, so generally, I always find that time cures everything. Like in this kind of discussion that Vaikuntapati Prabhu said that it's because of my karmic reactions that this person is.
Agreed. Agreed.
So generally, what I do is, I don't know if it is the right thing to do, but I don't really contemplate so much, to why this happened, because it causes a lot of stress. I just leave it and then I just chant.
Perfect.
And then a new day starts and then the time clears everything. So is that
Perfect.
the right way to go about it, or does it
See,
require
there is nothing like hard and fast rule. What works for me, and let's move forward. So if you're doing okay, fantastic. But we cannot draw that as a conclusion for everyone that, okay, Hari Bol, leave it on time and move forward. It doesn't happen. So if you're happy with your life, there's no need for asking a question then. Okay.
I was just, why the reason why I asked the question is, because you said we have to introspect and also ensure that it does not recur, right? While from my side, it happens and the next day everything is cleared out and I set it out in a new path. It may not happen the same way with the other person, right? The other person may not be able to actually think my way and leave it at that. So
correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that way I'm asking you, is this the right way to just leave it at that, or is it
Well,
important?
it depends on who is the victim party. If you are the culprit, and next day you say, I forgot about it. I mean, hey, this doesn't make sense, right? Then the question goes back to the victim. So if you are the culprit and you say, Prabhu, I forgot, what's the big deal? Of course, it's not a big deal for you because you caused emotional upheaval of somebody else. Okay, so you first of all identify you are the culprit or a victim. Then we'll answer your question. Okay, what's your second question?
Okay, so you're saying that in case I am the victim, my situation works. What I follow is good. In case I'm the culprit,
if you are a victim, what you said would not happen only. It's very difficult.
I'm scolded by somebody for.
You are scolded because you were scolded because you were the culprit. Because you created a situation for that chastisement. You can't say I was chastised, I am a victim now. I mean, this is new definition of victimhood now. No, who was the culprit for that situation to happen? Why the other person became angry? That also has to be seen. It's an individual case now, without getting into details of it. But the point is to say that I forgot. It can only happen when I have realized it was my mistake. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Mother, we are living in the material world that in Kali Yuga, this is two-way impossible for me to believe anyone can do that today. There's not so much maturity. Of course, devotees can do it. In general, I'm saying it's not the case. Person gets hurt. It keeps on brooding on it. Okay, what's your second question?
Second question is, Prabhu, you said, practice of Krishna consciousness has to bring about peace and happiness. And that is the real test when we are actually pleasing Krishna or not. But most of the times, at least I find a lot of anxiety, especially in terms of time, in terms of time management when, we need to do some service at a particular point in time and it gets late. So a lot of anxiety that goes on in the mind. More than the pleasure of doing the service, it's more anxiety. Does it mean that Krishna is not pleased with our service? Does that what it means?
See, that means too much mode of passion. Okay, that means too much mode of passion. And as long as we are in the modes of material nature, we'll continue to have these upheavals. What it means by Krishna is being pleased is we're happy with our services. We're happy with our spiritual life. That's what it means. Restlessness is born because of the mode of passion. So which kind of indicates that our conditioning could be so thick that after years of practice also not much have changed. And of course, in this regard, this is still a question for me and I'm still investigating what could be the answer. Many times, or not many times, sometimes the question is asked, "Arey, 20 saal ho gaye isko naam jap karte hue." Doesn't seem like much things have changed for him. Again, not externally. how he responds to situations. Still seems like too much in passion, gets angry, agitated, and people say, hey, is he really chanting or what? So chanting is not some miracle going to happen like that. We should have a whole picture here. Now, why and how, what amount of changes happen is still a question for me, actually, seriously. I'm still thinking about it. Again, it will only the experience and enough case studies that I have undergone, then I'll understand why people don't go through those changes. And is it that others are going through changes? Maybe not. They were of the milder nature, but temporarily they became affected because of too much effect of the material nature. See, we don't know about your past life, anyone's past life. Past life, not a previous birth or even of this birth. Before we met, we don't know what this devotee was 5 or 10 years ago in his behavior, her behavior. So we cannot be judgmental here and we cannot draw conclusion. One thing that I have seen, we have a habit of drawing inferences or interpolations very quickly. And then we consider those interpolations to be Vedic truths. No, Vedic truth is what scripture says as it is, not our interpolations. All right? Hare Krishna. Vaikunthpati Prabhu, you want to say something?
Prabhuji, I do not have any question, but I would like to, if with your permission, I would like to add a few points to what Chintamani Mataji said and what Medhavani Mataji said.
Yes, Prabhuji, go ahead, please.
So, what Chintamani Mataji said about this getting, there is also one more thing that can be done where we encourage a person who is coming to complain. Let's say that his mind is totally, really so much disturbed. And in that case, we also encourage him to segregate between the person and the subject matter and talk on the subject matter more. So, what went wrong, he also understands clearly. Many times what happens is because of the personal issues and because they bring the personal points also, the whole thing gets confused. So if it can be segregated, it will never get segregated. Even while talking again and again, the personal thing will come. But as a person or as a mentor, we have to keep on again trying to bring this segregation without without giving this person a feeling that your points are being ignored. No, your points are being heard. Whatever you are saying is absolutely right. But let us stick why it could have happened and what is the subject.
Correct, yes.
That's one thing I wanted to add. And secondly, what Medhavani Mataji said about that she forgets and goes forward, I think that's a real blessings of Krishna. It is, as you said, rightly said, it works in the back of your mind and it doesn't rest so easily. But if one can really forget what has happened, forget yesterday and today is a new day, if somebody can start like that, Hari, that's why.
Therefore, I asked the question: which role are you in? Are you a culprit or are you a victim? Because for a culprit, it is still easy to do.
Yeah.
For a victim is a blessing, as Prabhuji said.
Yes.
For a victim is a blessing. And then she said, when I get chastised, so then I made a point. You're not a victim, you're a culprit for getting chastised. You can't say you're a victim. All right, thank you, Prabhuji. Rathi Manjari Mataji, please go ahead.
Prabhuji, in the Shloka 2.72, there is a mention of Brahma Nirvana. In Krishna consciousness, it is Krishna Prem, Brahma Nirvana.
Yes, Brahma Nirvana means that only. Actually, moksha itself has different levels of meaning. One moksha is freedom from suffering. But the actual meaning of moksha is, the ultimate meaning of moksha is back home, back to Godhead. So that's what Brahma Nirvana here Prabhupada is saying. Brahma Nirvana doesn't refer to Brahma Jyoti, Sayujya Mukti. Refers to going back home, back to Godhead, like that.
Okay, thank
All right.
you so much.
Padma Govind Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, am I audible, Prabhuji?
Yes, you're audible, Prabhu.
Dandot Pranam, Prabhuji. You, in the middle of the class, you took 2 points. That is, one is chastising and another is continuously insulting. in this, Prabhuji, many of our devotees, they were of the opinion we can get this reconciled, and if it is not done, then leave at that. But my doubt is probably if somebody is insulting us, above him also some superior will be there. And change. We can also approach the superior and get that problem resolved, so that we may not have that mental tension.
Correct.
Can that be
That
done?
is, yes, it should be done. That is very essential. This is one practical application of parampara to take help. Correct. All right. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Mother Anjana.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, this is not related to today's lecture. It is just last Sunday. Verse 18-19. It's written that as per Vedic injunctions, never commit violence to anyone.
As a Vedic injunctions?
Never commit violence to anyone.
Oh, yeah,
We should not
yes,
commit
okay.
violence to anyone. Fine.
Correct.
So we will be punished in this material world. There also, everywhere will be punished.
Okay.
What about if someone commits violence to himself or herself?
Yeah, he's called as Atmahanaha. Ishopanishad text number 3 says, Asurinamate loka andhena tamasavrataha. What is that? Tam se pretyabhi gachanti yeke cha atmahana. So a self-abuser is called as Atmana, killer of the soul. Who's breaking the 4 regulative principles is a self-abuser.
Self-abuse. And what is his punishment? Like, see, in
His punishments are given in the 5th canto, 24th chapter, 28 hellish planets.
Hellish planets. Okay. Actually, this younger generation, they are just every time they are so much hyper and all that, they want to do this. Or for celebrities also, like they commit suicides and all that.
But the society is still a big thing. There is a verse in that chapter. If a grahastha, any householder, if a guest enters the house and you do not welcome the guest and you look with angry eyes towards the guest, फिर आ गया रे बदमाश, क्यों आ गया? Then there is a special hell for that family. You know, and it is explained in that hell there are these eagles and big birds. They come and poke and pluck your eyes. अच्छा, आंखें दिखा रहा था. And they pluck your eyes. And that goes on for a long time. And again your eyes come back. And again they pluck. Again your eyes come back. Your eyes goes. So there is whole discussion like that. So what happens, Mother? We are not able to see something immediately.
Right.
Vidurji in Mahabharata is described as somebody broad-minded. I don't want to go too much in details of it, but I'm missing the word, the Sanskrit word for broad-mindedness. So Vidurji is described as a person who knew the past, present, and future. He was described as somebody who had a long-sighted vision, visionary. You know, he knew what's going to happen. That's the reason he was warning Dhritarashtra again and again. It will bring a destruction to your whole family. But Dhritarashtra could not see. So what happens today, our consciousness is very, very limited to the degree our spiritual understanding is poor. As we grow on this process, you will see new horizons, new level of understandings, and new levels of realities will open for us. I'll give one small example and pause to this discussion. Brahmaji, every morning when he appears every morning from the lotus of Garbhadaksha Vishnu, and when he wakes up, he finds everything is flooded because the Naimatika Pralaya has happened. And in that situation, in that kind of time, Brahmaji is totally bewildered, he cannot see anything. Long story short, he performs meditation, Lord is pleased. And when Lord is pleased, when he gets the blessing of the Lord, now when he opens his eyes, he sees everything. He sees Garbhadaksha Vishnu. He sees from the level of Garbhadaksha Vishnu, the lotus stem is coming on top of which I am sitting. Everything he sees. And there is very beautiful thing is mentioned in the 3rd canto, Apashyanta Pashyatam. What he was not able to see before, he is able to see now because of the mercy of the Lord. So maybe for us it may not be visible how they are suffering or what they're going to suffer, but for enlightened being, they can see the past, present, future of that person. It's the subject matter of receiving the grace of the Lord.
So they are taking that decision in their hands because life
yes.
is decided by God.
Free will.
How much
Free
we
will.
have to live. Yes.
No,
they are
life is decided not by
misusing.
God. It's by free will.
It's by free will.
Yes, it's our free will. If Krishna has to decide our life, why would we be here? Then it means we are here because Krishna sent us here. No. Krishna, everything in this creation happens because of the will of the Lord or the permission of Krishna. But when it comes to living entities, even living entity, whatever action he does, has to be permitted by Krishna. But he is responsible. We'll discuss this in 5th chapter. We'll come across this subject matter. Come across. All right. Jai Prabhu.
Interesting.
Yes, we'll get to know. Haribol. Jai will conclude with a question. Go ahead with your question, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, at one point we were discussing, you had asked a question that what if someone treats us badly, and then whether that person can be a senior, peer, or a junior. At that time you had asked it as a question, and a lot of comments flowed in, and then you also gave your conclusion, but I couldn't reconcile. Like, if suppose, say, my concrete example is, if suppose say a family member or your sibling, they are too short-tempered, and since you are staying in a family, it is always you are not always the culprit, and you are not always the person who is victim. It happens. Situations happen. What should our attitude be like? How should we always tolerate? Because you see that they are your younger siblings, so you should also correct them for something. But then their nature is just not of the sense that they accept any kind of guidance, and then there is a whole lot of.
My whole take on this subject matter is self-care should be the highest priority. What I mean by self-care, if you think by advising and guiding that person, there would be a solution, which means it will not aggravate the subject matter and situation. You will become peaceful, and that person will also improve. Do that. But if you think by your speaking situation become worse and more, then forget about it. Self-care has to be the highest priority, which means, do I have the strength and ability to fix it? Then fix it. If I don't have, why unless you want to bang your head and create further problems for yourself? We are not Krishna who can fix everything. So we have to be a little careful of this aspect, and then there has to be tolerances unavoidable. We have to tolerate, no doubt about it. And when it becomes like, not able to tolerate, then we have to have those relationships where we go and vent it out and then discuss what should be the course of action. And this is an unavoidable step. Because if you avoid it, be assured, volcanic eruption certified. Now, would that be the world's biggest explosion? Maybe the family's biggest explosion. May not be the world, but that's going to happen. So we should avoid that situation. It's not a good and healthy situation. Imagine you become extremely angry and you're throwing up your tantrums. Can you imagine how much you're killing your body with that? And for days together, your mind becomes contaminated. So before that comes, better handle it like that. All right, Prabhu?
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna. So thank you all for your kind attention and being still around there. Some of you, it's 3 o'clock. You're breaking the online session records. And some of you look like nicely taking rest while having the online class, which makes total sense. So this is the mystical experience of the 21st century. We find it difficult to stay awake during the live class in person. And all of you are having this much patience for this online forum. That shows how much eager you are to, understand Bhagavad Gita and hear about Srila Prabhupada. Your attendance.
It is because of you, Prabhu. You create interest every time. A teacher has to do that thing in the class.
Looks like I can be a good film director then. Bollywood film director. They make 3-hour movies now, so I can keep an audience engaged for 3 hours. I'm just joking, but sincerely grateful to all of you. It inspires me seeing that such a wonderful audience that you would like to have a discussion and have so many questions on top of it. So sincere gratitude to each and every one of you, and thank you Vaikunthapati Prabhuji and Chintamani Mataji and all of them, all others, for adding in their valuable inputs and making a healthy discussion. However, I'm always open for feedbacks. As I said, how to give the feedback. So the sandwich formula. In case if anyone is thinking, Prabhu, aage bado, gaadi chalao. So if somebody is getting a little bit stressed out, Arey, my Brahman initiation is due 6 months from now. You're not finishing. You're not finishing Bhakti Shastri. No, we are going on time. I had decided to schedule for 2 years. But, I mean, 2 years for not Bhagavad Gita, whole 4 books, huh? So we are on time only that way. But Bhagavad Gita, particularly philosophy, we just study it, but we don't have a discussion. It will really not actually do justice. And so that's the reason I'm kind of a little bit, once in a while I poke, and it's good. We have so many wonderful devotees here who can add in some valuable inputs. So like that, all right? And please don't trust me in case with your Brahman initiation something happens here and there. Okay. But of course, I don't think so anyone is here from that mindset like that. Okay. So thank you. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.